Never mix business with desperation. That's what Dr. Wendy's mentor had warned her during her final year of veterinary school. But when your clinic is drowning in debt, when the bank is 3 days from foreclosure, and when a mysterious wealthy client promises to pay triple your usual fee for a single house call, desperation doesn't just knock, it kicks down the door. Wendy would learn that some phone numbers should never be dialed, some clients should never be accepted, and some mistakes attract wolves in the darkness. Chapter 1. The Call That Changed Everything. The fluorescent lights in Moonridge Veterinary Clinic flickered again, a reminder that Wendy hadn't paid the electricity bill in 2 months. She pressed her palm against her forehead, staring at the stack of red-stamped envelopes spreading across her desk like a plague. Final notice. Final notice. Final notice. Dr. Taylor? Her receptionist, Rita, poked her head through the doorway, her voice hesitant. The pharmaceutical supplier called again. They're threatening to cut off our orders if we don't pay by Friday. Wendy forced a smile that felt like shattered glass. Tell them I'll have the payment ready. Rita's expression said what her words didn't. You've been saying that for 3 months. After Rita left, Wendy slumped in her chair and glanced around the clinic she'd built from nothing. 5 years of veterinary school, 3 years of working 18-hour days to establish her practice in this small mountain town. Everything she'd sacrificed, her social life, her savings, her mother's inheritance, all of it poured into these walls. And now, at 28, she was watching it crumble. The town of Moonridge had been perfect when she'd first arrived. Nestled in the Cascade Mountains, surrounded by forests and wildlife. It should have been a thriving location for a veterinary practice, but the logging industry had collapsed 2 years ago, taking half the town's population with it. The families who remained could barely afford to feed themselves, let alone bring their pets in for regular checkups. Wendy's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost declined the call, probably another creditor, but something made her answer. Moonridge Veterinary Clinic, Dr. Taylor speaking. Silence. Then, a woman's voice, sharp and professional. Is this the emergency veterinary line for Silvercrest Estate? Wendy frowned. I'm sorry. I think you have the wrong. I need a veterinarian immediately. One of our animals has been injured. We'll pay $5,000 for a house call. Tonight, $5,000. Wendy's breath caught. That was more than she made in a good month. That was the electricity bill, the pharmaceutical supplier, and the bank payment with money left over. What kind of animal are we talking about? Wendy asked carefully, already reaching for her emergency veterinary bag. Does it matter? The woman's voice carried an edge of impatience. $5,000, Dr. Taylor. Cash. But you need to come now. Every instinct Wendy had developed in veterinary school screamed at her to hang up. Legitimate clients didn't offer $5,000 for house calls. Legitimate clients didn't refuse to specify what kind of animal needed treatment. Legitimate clients didn't call from unknown numbers and demand immediate service at 9 p.m. But legitimate clients also didn't solve 3 months of crushing debt with a single phone call. Where's Silvercrest Estate? Wendy heard herself ask. I'm texting you the address now. Come alone, tell no one. And Dr. Taylor? The woman paused. Whatever you see tonight. Discretion is not optional. It's survival. The call ended. Wendy stared at her phone, her heart hammering against her ribs. The text arrived seconds later. An address deep in the mountains, at least 40 minutes outside Moonridge, the kind of place where cell service died and GPS signals got confused. She should call the police. She should tell Rita where she was going. She should do a dozen sensible things that responsible adults did when faced with suspicious late-night house calls from strangers offering absurd amounts of money. Instead, Wendy grabbed her veterinary bag, checked that her emergency supplies were stocked, and headed for her truck. The mountain road twisted through dense forest, her headlights carving tunnels through darkness so complete it felt solid. Wendy's hands tightened on the steering wheel as the GPS signal flickered in and out. The address led her deeper into wilderness she'd never explored, past the hiking trails and campgrounds that tourists frequented. After 30 minutes, the paved road became gravel. After 40, the gravel became dirt. Her truck bounced over ruts and rocks, branches scraping against the sides like skeletal fingers. Finally, the forest opened into a clearing. Wendy's jaw dropped. Calling it an estate was like calling the ocean damp. The mansion before her sprawled across the mountainside like a sleeping giant, 3 stories of stone and timber, with floor-to-ceiling windows that glowed with warm light. A circular driveway wrapped around an elaborate fountain. Gardens stretched into the darkness on either side, manicured and pristine despite the wild forest surrounding them. This was old money. Serious money. The kind of wealth that didn't advertise itself in town, that existed in its own orbit, above the concerns of ordinary people. Wendy parked her battered truck next to a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than her entire clinic. She grabbed her bag and approached the massive front doors, feeling acutely aware of her worn jeans and the coffee stain on her jacket. Before she could knock, the door swung open. The woman from the phone stood in the doorway, mid-40s, steel-gray hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing a black suit that screamed personal assistant to someone very important. Her sharp eyes assessed Wendy with the efficiency of a predator evaluating prey. "Dr. Taylor, follow me." Quickly, Wendy stepped inside, and the door closed behind her with a sound like a vault ceiling. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior: marble floors, cathedral ceilings, artwork that belonged in museums. But the woman didn't give her time to gawk. She strode down a long hallway, her heels clicking against the stone like a countdown. "What's your name?" Wendy asked, jogging to keep up. "Miss Thorne. I manage Silvercrest Estate." "And who owns?" "You'll meet him shortly. First, the patient." Miss Thorne pushed open a heavy wooden door, revealing what looked like a private medical facility. Examination table, surgical lights, cabinets filled with supplies that would make most veterinary clinics jealous. But it was the figure on the table that made Wendy stop breathing. It was a wolf, not a dog, not a wolf hybrid. A genuine, massive, wild wolf with fur as black as midnight, and eyes that tracked Wendy's every movement with unsettling intelligence. "You want me to treat a wolf?" Wendy's voice came out higher than she'd intended. "His name is Shadow," Miss Thorne said, as if that explained everything. "He has a deep laceration on his left flank. The bleeding has stopped, but we need it cleaned and sutured." Wendy set down her bag with trembling hands. She'd treated plenty of aggressive dogs in veterinary school, but wolves were different. Wolves were apex predators. Wolves didn't tolerate human proximity unless they were sedated or dead. This wolf was neither. He lay on the table, perfectly still, watching her with eyes that seemed to glow in the surgical lights, not yellow or amber like normal wolves, but an eerie silver gold that made her skin prickle. "Has he been sedated?" Wendy asked. "No." "Then how?" "Shadow understands that you're here to help, don't you, Shadow?" The wolf's ear twitched. Wendy's scientific mind rejected what her instincts were screaming. This animal understood human speech. "Miss Thorne, I need you to be honest with me. What is going on here?" The older woman's expression didn't change. "You're a veterinarian. An animal is injured. That's all you need to know to do your job and collect your payment. $5,000, Wendy reminded herself. $5,000 that would save her clinic. She approached the examination table slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. The wolf's silver gold eyes tracked her, but he didn't growl or bare his teeth. Up close, she could see the injury: a long gash across his left flank, deep but clean, as if made by something incredibly sharp. "I need to clean the wound first," Wendy said, reaching for her supplies. "It's going to sting." The wolf's eyes seemed to narrow, as if he understood and was bracing himself. Wendy cleaned the wound with antiseptic, expecting the wolf to snap or thrash. Instead, he remained absolutely still, only the slight tension in his muscles indicating he felt pain. His level of control was impossible, unnatural. As she worked, preparing the suture kit, Wendy became aware of a presence in the doorway. She glanced up and her hands froze. The man standing in the doorway was the most striking human being Wendy had ever seen. Tall, easily 6'4", with broad shoulders that filled the doorframe. His hair was dark, almost black, and slightly too long, brushing against the collar of his expensive shirt. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart, the same impossible silver gold as the wolf on her table. "How is he?" The man's voice was deep, carrying an accent she couldn't quite place. Something old, something that made the hair on her arm stand up. "The wound is deep but clean," Wendy managed, forcing herself to focus on her work instead of the man's unsettling beauty. "No sign of infection. I can suture it. But he'll need antibiotics and rest. He'll heal faster than you expect, the man said, stepping into the room. His movements were fluid, predatory. I'm more concerned about your discretion. Miss Thorne already mentioned that. Did she mention the consequences if you fail to be discreet? Wendy's hand stilled on the suture needle. Is that a threat? The man smiled. And it wasn't a comforting expression. It's a reality. There are things in these mountains that people like you aren't meant to know about. You've stumbled into one of those things tonight. People like me? Humans. The word hung in the air like a blade. Wendy's laugh came out shaky. As opposed to what? Aliens? The man's smile widened, showing teeth that seemed slightly too sharp. Something like that. Before Wendy could respond, the wolf shadow made a low rumbling sound. Not quite a growl, more like a vibration that seemed to come from deep in his chest. The man's attention snapped to the wolf. And something passed between them. A look. A communication that had no words but somehow carried complete understanding. Finish the sutures, the man said. I need to make a call. He left the room. And Wendy released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Don't mind him, Miss Thorne said dryly. He has a flair for the dramatic. Who is he? Someone you don't want to cross, Dr. Taylor. Finish your work. Wendy returned her attention to Shadow, her hands steadier now despite the bizarre, not-ness of the situation. She worked methodically, placing each suture with precision. The wolf never moved, never flinched, maintaining that impossible stillness. As she tied off the final suture, Shadow's eyes met hers, and in that moment, Wendy would have sworn she saw something human looking back at her. All done, she said, stepping back. Change the bandage daily. Watch for signs of infection, swelling, heat, discharge. Though if he heals as fast as your employer suggested, he will, Miss Thorne said. Your payment. She held out an envelope. Wendy opened it and counted $100 bills, crisp and new. $5,000. Her clinic's salvation. Thank you, Wendy said. If you need follow-up care, we won't. Miss Thorne led her back through the mansion's hallways. But as they approached the front door, a howl split the night long, mournful and close. Too close. Wendy froze. What was that? Your signal to leave. Quickly. Miss Thorne practically pushed her out the front door. Wendy stumbled onto the driveway, clutching her bag and the envelope of money. Behind her, the mansion's lights began to dim, one window at a time, as if the building itself was going to sleep. Another howl answered the first, then another, and another. Wendy ran for her truck. She threw her bag into the passenger seat, started the engine, and gunned it down the driveway. In her rearview mirror, she saw them shadows moving at the edge of the forest. Large shadows, too large to be natural. Wolves. Not one or two. Dozens. Their eyes reflected her taillights like scattered stars, silver and gold and green, watching her flee. The dirt road had never seemed longer. Every shadow looked like it might leap onto her hood. Every sound made her flinch. But finally, blessedly, she reached the paved road, then the highway, then the familiar streets of Moonridge. Wendy didn't stop shaking until she was parked behind her clinic, the doors locked, the envelope of cash clutched against her chest like a talisman. What the hell just happened? She looked at her phone. 11:47 p.m. She'd been gone less than 3 hours. It felt like a lifetime. As she sat in the darkness, trying to process the impossibilities she'd witnessed, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against every shred of common sense, Wendy answered. Dr. Taylor. It was the man's voice, that same unsettling depth. You did well tonight. Shadow is grateful. Who are you? Wendy whispered. My name is K.L. Silvercrest, and you, Dr. Taylor, have just become very interesting to some very dangerous people. That phone number you called? It wasn't for a veterinarian. It was for my private line, a line that only my pack knows. Pack? The wolves you saw tonight. We've been searching for whoever has access to that number. Someone who shouldn't. Someone who's been problematic. Wendy's blood turned to ice. I told you. I was given this number by someone who wanted you to find us. Someone who wanted to see what would happen when a human stumbled into our territory. Kale's voice lowered. You were bait, Dr. Taylor. And now that you've seen what you've seen, you have two choices. You can run though. I promise you won't get far. Or you can come back tomorrow night. Same time, same place. And I'll explain everything. And if I don't, then the wolves you saw tonight will come to you. And I won't be able to stop them. The call ended. Wendy sat in her truck, staring at the envelope of money that suddenly felt like a death sentence, and wondered if saving her clinic had just cost her everything else. Chapter 2. The second visit. Wendy didn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table until dawn, the envelope of cash in front of her like evidence at a crime scene. Every creak of her old apartment made her jump. Every shadow outside her window looked like it might have 4 legs and silver eyes. Wolves. He called them his pack. The rational part of her brain, the part that had earned a doctorate in veterinary medicine, that understood anatomy and biology, and the limits of what was scientifically possible, kept insisting she'd hallucinated the whole thing. Stress-induced delusion. Carbon monoxide poisoning from her truck's exhaust. Something. But the money was real. The sutures she'd placed were real. And the claw marks she'd noticed on Shadow's examination table, deep gouges in solid steel, were definitely real. At 6 a.m., Rita called. "Dr. Taylor? Are you okay? You never called me back last night." Wendy had forgotten she'd texted Rita about the house call. "I'm fine. The call ran late, that's all. Was it legitimate? You didn't get murdered by some crazy backwoods hoarder, right?" Rita's attempt at humor fell flat. "It was unusual, but they paid." Wendy stared at the envelope. "They paid very well. Well enough to cover the pharmaceutical supplier? Well enough to cover everything." Rita's shocked silence spoke volumes. "Everything. Dr. Taylor, what kind of animal did you treat?" "A wolf. A wolf that understood English and didn't flinch while I sutured him without anesthesia. A wolf whose owner has the same impossible eyes and claims to have a pack that will hunt me if I don't come back tonight." "A difficult case," Wendy said instead. "Rita, I need you to deposit this money today. I'll bring it by the clinic in an hour." After hanging up, Wendy showered and changed, trying to wash away the feeling that her life had just veered off course into something dark and unknown. The hot water helped. Coffee helped more. But neither could erase Cale Silvercrest's final words. "The wolves you saw will come to you, and I won't be able to stop them." She had 2 options, run or return. Running meant abandoning her clinic, her home, everything she'd built. It meant living in fear, constantly looking over her shoulder, never knowing if the shadows held teeth and claws. Returning meant walking back into danger with her eyes open. But it also meant answers. And Wendy had never been good at leaving mysteries unsolved. By 8 p.m. that evening, she'd made her decision. The drive to Silvercrest Estate felt different in the fading daylight. The forest looked less menacing, the dirt road more like a rustic driveway than a path to doom. Wendy almost convinced herself that last night had been an overreaction fueled by exhaustion and atmospheric lighting. Then she saw the wolves. They weren't hiding this time. They stood at the forest edge, dozens of them, watching her truck pass with that same unsettling intelligence. Black wolves, gray wolves, wolves with fur that seemed to shimmer in the dying light. All of them massive, all of them silent. Wendy's hands tightened on the steering wheel, but she didn't stop, didn't speed up, just maintained a steady pace like this was completely normal, like driving through a gauntlet of predators was something she did every Tuesday. The mansion looked different too. Less intimidating, more lived in. Lights blazed in multiple windows. She could hear music playing, something classical, violin, and piano. Smoke curled from one of the chimneys, carrying the scent of burning cedar. Miss Thorne met her at the door again, but this time her severe expression held something that might have been approval. "You came. Did you think I wouldn't?" Wendy asked, stepping inside. "Most humans run. It's instinct." Miss Thorne closed the door. "Mr. Silvercrest is in his study. He's expecting you." She led Wendy through the mansion, past the medical room from last night, down a different hallway, lined with paintings that looked centuries old. The study doors were made of dark wood carved with intricate patterns, wolves running through forests, hunting beneath full moons. Miss Thorne knocked twice and opened the door without waiting for an answer. The study was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves covering 3 walls and a massive fireplace dominating the 4th. Cale Silvercrest stood by the fire, one hand resting on the mantel, his profile sharp in the flickering light. He was even more striking than Wendy remembered. Tall and broad-shouldered, with that predatory grace that made every movement look purposeful. He wore dark jeans and a gray sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent, sleeves pushed up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. But it was still his eyes that caught her silver gold and utterly inhuman. "Dr. Taylor." He turned to face her fully. "I wasn't certain you'd accept my invitation." "It didn't sound optional," Wendy said, pleased when her voice came out steady. Cale's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Perceptive. Would you like a drink? You look like you could use one." "Information. That's what I need. Direct." "I appreciate that." Cale gestured to 2 leather chairs positioned near the fire. "Sit. This conversation is going to take a while." Wendy sat, her veterinary bag at her feet. She'd brought it on instinct, though she had no idea if Shadow would need follow-up care. Cale settled into the opposite chair with fluid ease, his long legs stretched out, firelight playing across his features. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the mansion, a clock chimed the hour. "You want to know what I am," Cale said finally. "What Shadow is. What the wolves you saw are." "Yes. The word you're looking for is LYCAN. Some cultures call us werewolves, though that term carries unfortunate Hollywood baggage. We're not undead, we don't fear silver or wolfsbane, and we certainly don't turn into mindless beasts during full moons." Wendy's scientific mind rebelled. "That's impossible. Humans can't transform into wolves. The skeletal structure alone, who said we're human?" Cale's eyes caught the firelight, reflecting it back like mirrors. "We're something older, Dr. Taylor. Something that existed long before cities and civilization tried to tame the wild places. My kind has lived in these mountains for thousands of years. Your kind, lycans, shapeshifters, the pack." He leaned forward slightly. "Shadow, the wolf you treated last night, is my beta. My second in command. In his wolf form, he can't speak human languages, but he understands them perfectly. As do all of us when we shift." Wendy's hands gripped the arms of her chair. Every rational bone in her body screamed that this was insane, that she should leave immediately, that accepting any of this as real meant abandoning everything she understood about biology and physics and reality itself. But the evidence sat in front of her, wearing an expensive sweater, and watching her with eyes no human should possess. "Prove it," she heard herself say. Cale's eyebrows rose. "Prove it? You're asking me to believe in something that violates every scientific principle I know, so prove it. Show me." For a long moment, Cale just looked at her. Then he laughed, a low, genuine sound that made something warm flutter in Wendy's chest despite her fear. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish, Dr. Taylor. I haven't decided which." He stood, moving to the center of the study. "Most humans beg me not to show them. The sight tends to break something fundamental in the human psyche. I'm not most humans." "No," Cale said softly, his silver gold eyes locked on hers. "You're certainly not." What happened next would stay burned into Wendy's memory for the rest of her life. Cale's body began to change. Not slowly, not painfully like the movies depicted, but with a fluid grace that seemed to defy physics. His bones restructured with sounds like branches bending in wind. His skin rippled as muscle and sinew rearranged themselves. Dark fur sprouted across his body as his frame expanded, shoulders broadening, spine curving. In less than 10 seconds, the man was gone. In his place stood a wolf. But calling it a wolf was like calling the ocean a puddle. This creature was massive, easily the size of a small horse, with fur as dark as midnight, and those same impossible silver gold eyes now set in a lupine face. Every inch of him radiated power and ancient intelligence. Wendy couldn't breathe, couldn't move, could only stare as the wolf that had been Cale Silvercrest took a step toward her, his massive paws silent on the study floor. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough to see the individual hairs in his thick coat. Then, slowly, deliberately, he lowered his head and sat the universal canine gesture of non-aggression. The message was clear. "I could kill you in seconds, but I won't." Wendy's scientific mind finally caught up with her shock. She leaned forward, her curiosity overriding her fear. "May I?" The wolf's ear twitched permission. With trembling hands, Wendy reached out and touched his fur. It was thick, coarse, warm, real. She ran her fingers along his skull, feeling the bone structure beneath. Not quite wolf, not quite anything she'd studied in veterinary school. Something in between. Something unique. "This is impossible," she whispered. "The energy requirements alone. The metabolic changes. Your mass has increased by at least 200 pounds. Where did that matter come from?" The wolf made a sound that might have been amusement, a low chuff that stirred her hair. Then, just as quickly as he'd transformed, Cale shifted back. The change flowed over him in reverse, fur receding, bones restructuring, until once again a man knelt on the study floor where a wolf had been seconds before. He was slightly out of breath, his sweater and jeans somehow intact, despite what should have destroyed them. "The laws of physics as you understand them don't fully apply to my kind. We exist in a space between your science and something older, something primal." Wendy's legs gave out, and she collapsed back into the chair, her mind reeling. "I need that drink now." Cale stood with easy grace and moved to a cabinet, returning with 2 glasses of amber liquid. "Whiskey. 20-year-old single malt. If you're going to have an existential crisis, might as well do it with quality alcohol." She took the glass and downed half of it in one burning gulp. The whiskey hit her system like liquid courage, steadying her racing heart. "Okay," Wendy said finally. "Okay. You're real. Lycans are real. Werewolves are real. Yes. And Shadow, all those wolves I saw, they're all my pack. 43 Lycans call Silvercrest Estate home. This is our territory, our sanctuary. We've lived here for generations, hidden from human eyes, maintaining the old ways. Why?" Wendy's scientific curiosity was fully engaged now, overriding her shock. "Why hide? If your kind has this kind of power, because humans fear what they don't understand, and they destroy what they fear." Cale's expression darkened. "There were more packs once. Hundreds scattered across North America. Then European colonizers arrived with their guns and their churches and their certainty that anything different must be evil. They hunted us, killed us, drove us to the brink of extinction. How many packs are left? 6. Maybe 7. We've lost contact with the pack in Alaska. They may be gone." He took a drink from his own glass. "We survive by staying hidden, by controlling our territories absolutely, by making sure no human ever has reason to suspect we're anything other than wealthy recluses." Wendy processed this, her mind racing through implications. "The phone number I called. You said it was your private line?" "Yes. A number that only my pack knows. A number that should never have been given to an outsider." Cale's eyes hardened. "Someone in my pack is either a traitor or catastrophically careless. Either way, it's a threat I need to eliminate. You think someone gave me that number on purpose? As some kind of test? I think someone wanted to see what would happen when a human stumbled into our world. You were bait, Dr. Taylor. The question is, bait for what?" A knock on the study door interrupted them. Miss Thorne entered, her expression tight. "Alpha, we have a problem." Cale was on his feet instantly, his entire demeanor shifting from conversational to commanding. "What kind of problem?" "Border breach. Northeast quadrant. 3 rogues, all male, all armed." "Armed with what?" "Silver. Guns loaded with silver bullets." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Cale's eyes flashed that impossible gold, and for a moment Wendy saw the wolf lurking just beneath his human skin. "Get Shadow and the border patrol. Full defensive formation. I want those rogues found and neutralized before they get within 5 miles of the main house." Cale turned to Wendy. "You need to stay here. Lock the study door behind me, and don't open it for anyone except Miss Thorne." "Wait, rogues? What are rogues?" "Lycans without packs. Outcasts. They're unpredictable, violent, and right now they're hunting on my territory." Cale moved toward the door, his movements suddenly predatory. "Miss Thorne, keep Dr. Taylor safe. If anything happens to her." "Nothing will happen to her, Alpha." Cale paused at the door, looking back at Wendy. "I'm sorry. This isn't how I wanted this evening to go. But welcome to my world, Dr. Taylor. It's not always civilized." Then he was gone. Miss Thorne close behind him, leaving Wendy alone in the study with her half-finished whiskey and the reality that everything she thought she knew about the world had just been torn apart. Outside, in the darkness beyond the mansion's walls, wolves began to howl. Chapter 3: Silver Bullets and Broken Trust. The howls started as distant calls, mournful, searching. Then they multiplied, layering over each other until the night itself seemed to vibrate with sound. Wendy stood frozen in Cale's study, her whiskey glass trembling in her hand as the symphony of wolf voices built to a crescendo. These weren't the howls of animals. There was communication in them, coordination, language without words. A window shattered somewhere in the mansion. Wendy jumped, nearly dropping her glass. Her veterinary instincts kicked in. Assess, stabilize, survive. She set down the whiskey and moved to the study door, pressing her ear against the heavy wood. Footsteps. Running. Shouting in voices she didn't recognize. Then gunfire. The sharp crack of rifles echoed through the mountain night, followed by a sound that made Wendy's blood freeze, a scream that started human and ended as something else entirely. "Stay in the study," Cale had said. "Lock the door." But every medical instinct Wendy possessed screamed at her to help. Those gunshots meant injuries. Injuries meant she was needed, LYCAN or human or whatever existed in between. She grabbed her veterinary bag, laughably inadequate for a firefight, but all she had, and cracked open the study door. The hallway was chaos. 2 LYCANs in wolf form raced past her, their massive bodies moving with impossible speed. Blood stained the marble floors bright red, definitely fresh. More gunfire erupted from somewhere deeper in the mansion, followed by the sounds of snarling and breaking furniture. Wendy pressed herself against the wall, trying to process what she was seeing. A wolf, gray-furred, slightly smaller than Shadow, limped down the hallway, leaving a trail of blood behind. The animal's left hind leg dragged uselessly, and even from 20 feet away, Wendy could see the bullet wound in its shoulder. The wolf collapsed against the wall. Its breathing labored. Every shred of common sense told Wendy to stay hidden, to let the LYCANs handle their own wounded. But she'd taken an oath to relieve suffering, to provide care, to never turn away from an animal in need. Are LYCANs animals? Her mind whispered. Or something else? It didn't matter. Wendy sprinted to the wounded wolf, dropping to her knees beside it. Up close, the damage was worse than she'd thought. The bullet had entered just below the shoulder blade, and the way the wolf wheezed suggested lung involvement, internal bleeding. Maybe a punctured lung. "Hey," Wendy said softly, the same tone she used with frightened dogs. "I'm going to help you, okay? Just stay still." The wolf's eyes, pale amber, not the silver gold of Cale's pack leadership, fixed on her with an intensity that was disturbingly human. The animal tried to growl, but it came out as a wet cough. I know. You don't trust me, but I'm all you've got right now." Wendy opened her bag, pulling out gauze and antiseptic. "This is going to hurt." "I'm sorry." She pressed gauze against the wound, trying to staunch the bleeding. The wolf yelped a sound of pure agony but didn't snap at her. Beneath her hands, she felt the animal's body temperature dropping, the heartbeat becoming erratic. No. Stay with me." Wendy worked faster, her training taking over. Stop the bleeding, stabilize, get to surgery. But she didn't have a surgery. She had a hallway in a mansion under siege, a veterinary bag designed for house cats, and a patient who was something medical school had never prepared her for. The wolf's breathing became shallow. Its eyes started to glaze. "Please," Wendy whispered, not sure who she was begging. "Please don't die." A shadow fell over her. Wendy looked up and immediately wished she hadn't. The man standing above her was LYCAN. She could tell that much. But wrong. Everything about him screamed wrong. His eyes were pale yellow, shot through with red veins. His skin had a grayish tint, and when he smiled, his teeth were filed to points. Well, the rogue LYCAN said, his voice a rasp that sounded like gravel scraping concrete. "The human pet. Cale's new toy." Wendy's hand moved slowly toward her bag, where she kept a scalpel for emergency field amputations. "I'm a veterinarian. I'm trying to help. You're trespassing on pack business, little human." The rogue crouched down, bringing his face level with hers. His breath smelled like rotting meat. "Do you know what we do to humans who see too much? I know what happens to people who threaten medical professionals." Wendy's fingers closed around the scalpel handle. We tend to have friends in law enforcement. The rogue laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Law enforcement. As if your human laws mean anything in. He never finished the sentence. A massive black shape exploded from the shadows, slamming into the rogue with enough force to crack the marble floor. Cale, in wolf form, even larger than Wendy remembered, had the rogue by the throat before the man could scream. The fight was brutal and brief. Cale's jaws closed around the rogue's neck, and there was a sickening crunch. The rogue went limp, dead before he hit the ground. Cale shifted back to human form, blood staining his mouth and sweater. His silver-gold eyes blazed with fury as he turned to Wendy. "I told you to stay in the study. This wolf needed help." Wendy gestured to her patient, who was still breathing but barely conscious. Gunshot wound to the shoulder. Possible lung involvement. "I've stopped the external bleeding, but there's definitely internal damage." Cale's expression shifted from anger to assessment. He knelt beside the wounded wolf, placing one hand on its head. "Jordan, can you hear me?" The wolf's ear twitched weakly. "He's one of my youngest pack members. Just turned 20 last month." Cale's jaw tightened. "Can you save him?" "Not here. I need proper facilities. An operating room. X-ray equipment if you have it." "We have everything you need. The medical room where you treated Shadow, it's a full surgical suite." Cale scooped up the massive wolf as if it weighed nothing, cradling Jordan against his chest. "Follow me, stay close." They moved through the mansion at a run, Cale leading the way while Wendy struggled to keep pace. The sounds of fighting had faded, replaced by the groans of wounded LYCANs and the sharp commands of pack members coordinating cleanup. Bodies littered the floor, all rogues, all male, all dead. Wendy forced herself not to look too closely at the carnage. The medical room was exactly as Cale promised, a full surgical suite that would make most veterinary hospitals jealous. X-ray machine, ultrasound, anesthesia equipment, cabinets full of supplies. Someone had built this specifically for treating LYCANs. Cale laid Jordan on the examination table. The young wolf's breathing had become dangerously shallow, his heartbeat thready and weak. "I need you to shift him back to human form," Wendy said, already pulling on surgical gloves. "I can't operate effectively on a wolf's anatomy. The lung structure is too different. He's unconscious. He can't shift voluntarily. Can you force it?" Cale hesitated. "Yes, but it's painful, and in his condition, he's dying. We don't have a choice." Cale placed both hands on Jordan's wolf form, closed his eyes, and began to whisper in a language Wendy didn't recognize. Something old, something that made the air in the room feel heavy and charged. The wolf's body began to change, fur receding, bones restructuring. But unlike Cale's smooth transformation, this one was jerky, incomplete. Jordan's human form emerged slowly, a young man, maybe early 20s, with sandy hair and a face contorted in unconscious pain. The bullet wound remained in his shoulder, even more devastating against human flesh. "Okay," Wendy said, her voice steady despite the impossibility of what she'd just witnessed. "I need silence and space. If you're staying, you follow my instructions exactly. Understood?" "Understood." For the next hour, Wendy worked with the focused intensity that had earned her top marks in veterinary school. The bullet had indeed punctured Jordan's lung, and there was significant internal bleeding from a nicked artery. She worked methodically, repair the artery, remove bullet fragments, reinflate the lung, close the wound in layers. Cale assisted with surprising competence, anticipating her needs before she voiced them. His hands were steady, his movements precise. This wasn't his first time in an operating room. Finally, Wendy tied off the last suture and stepped back, sweat beading her forehead. "He'll live, but he needs rest, antibiotics, and monitoring for the next 48 hours. He'll heal faster than a human would," Cale said, but his voice was heavy with relief. "Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Jordan he's like a nephew to me. If he died because I couldn't protect him, he didn't die. And you did protect him, you killed the rogue who was threatening both of us." Cale's expression darkened. "There were 5 rogues total. We killed 4. 1 escaped. That's bad. That's catastrophic. He'll report back to whoever sent them. And now they know we have a human veterinarian who's seen our true nature." Cale moved to a sink, washing Jordan's blood from his hands. You're not safe anymore, Dr. Taylor. Not here. And not in Moonridge. Wendy's stomach clenched. What are you saying? I'm saying you need to stay at Silvercrest Estate until we neutralize the threat. The rogue who escaped got a good look at you. If he reports to the wrong people. What people? Who sent them? Cale turned to face her, his silver gold eyes grave. There's another pack, the Blackridge pack, led by a LYCAN named Victor Ashwood. He's been trying to take over our territory for years, but the pack council has always blocked him. Our claim to this mountain is ancient and absolute. He paused. Until now, Victor has respected the old laws. But if he's sending rogues into our territory with silver bullets, he's escalating. He's preparing for war. Cale crossed to a window, staring out at the dark forest. And you, Dr. Taylor, just became a very valuable piece on his chessboard. Because I know about LYCANs. Because you're an outsider who's seen our world and survived. To Victor, that makes you either a potential witness against us, evidence that we exist, or a tool he can use to manipulate me. Cale's reflection in the window glass looked haunted. The last time Victor wanted to hurt me, he killed someone I cared about. Made sure I watched. I won't let that happen again. The weight of his words settled over Wendy like a shroud. 24 hours ago, her biggest problem had been paying her bills. Now she was caught in the middle of a supernatural war between rival wolf packs. How long? She asked quietly. How long do I need to stay here? I don't know. Days. Maybe weeks. Cale turned back to her. I know this isn't fair. I know you have a life. A clinic. Responsibilities. But if you go back to Moonridge now, Victor's rogues will find you. And they won't be as merciful as I am. Wendy thought of her clinic, her apartment, Rita waiting for her to show up tomorrow morning. Everything normal, and safe and ordinary. Everything she might never get back if she agreed to this. But she also thought of Jordan lying on the table, alive because she'd refused to hide. She thought of Shadow trusting her with his injury. She thought of Cale. This strange man-wolf hybrid with ancient eyes and a burden he carried like armor. I need to make a phone call, Wendy said. Rita needs to know I'll be gone. And my clinic. Miss Thorne will handle it. Whatever story you need told, whatever arrangements need to be made, she'll take care of it discreetly. Cale approached her slowly, as if afraid she might bolt. I know I'm asking too much. I know this is insane. But you saved one of my pack tonight. That means something. In LYCAN culture, it creates a debt. I don't want your debt. I just want to understand what I've gotten myself into. Then stay. Let me show you our world. Not the violence and the blood, that's not who we are. Let me show you why my pack is worth protecting. Why keeping our secret matters. Wendy met his silver gold eyes and saw something there she hadn't expected: vulnerability. Fear. The same emotion she felt reflected back at her. Okay, she heard herself say. I'll stay, but I have conditions. Name them. First, full transparency. No more secrets about what you are, or what's happening. Second, I continue treating your pack's medical needs. Jordan isn't the only one who got hurt tonight. And third, yes, you teach me. About LYCANs, about your culture, about everything. If I'm risking my life for your world, I want to understand it. Cale's expression softened into something that might have been respect. Agreed, on all counts. He held out his hand. Welcome to the pack, Dr. Taylor, even if you're only an honorary member. Wendy shook his hand, his grip warm and strong. The moment their skin touched, she felt something, a spark, a connection, like static electricity but warmer. Cale felt it too. She saw his eyes widen briefly before he released her hand. Get some rest, he said, his voice slightly rougher. Miss Thorne will show you to a guest room. Tomorrow, after Jordan is stable, we'll begin your education, and the rogue who escaped. I'll have patrols searching all night. If he's still on the mountain by dawn, we'll find him. Cale's expression hardened into something predatory. No one threatens my pack and lives to brag about it. He left the medical room, and Wendy was alone with the unconscious Jordan and the reality of what she'd just agreed to. Through the window, she could see the dark forest, and somewhere out there, wolves moving through shadows, hunting, protecting, living a life that existed just beneath the surface of the world she'd thought she understood. Wendy pressed her hand against the glass, feeling the cold seep through. What have I done? But she already knew the answer. She'd seen the impossible made real. She'd crossed a threshold that couldn't be uncrossed. She'd saved a life that medical textbooks said shouldn't exist. And somewhere in the darkness, a rogue was running with her face burned into his memory, reporting to a pack leader who would see her as either a threat or an opportunity. Either way, Dr. Wendy Taylor's ordinary life was over. The wolves had claimed her now. Chapter 4. Whispers of War. Wendy didn't expect to sleep, but exhaustion claimed her the moment her head hit the pillow in the guest room Miss Thorne had prepared. She dreamed of wolves with silver eyes and forests that breathed, of running on four legs through moonlit shadows while something ancient and hungry chased behind her. She woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. For a blissful moment, Wendy thought she was home. Then she registered the silk sheets, the hand-carved furniture, the oil painting on the wall worth more than her entire apartment building. Reality crashed back. LYCAN's Silvercrest Estate. I'm trapped in a supernatural war zone. A knock on the door made her jump. Dr. Taylor? Miss Thorne's crisp voice carried through the wood. Breakfast is ready. And Jordan is asking for you. Wendy threw on yesterday's clothes she hadn't packed for an extended stay, and followed Miss Thorne through the mansion's hallways. In daylight, Silvercrest Estate looked less intimidating and more like a luxury mountain retreat. Artwork lined the walls, ranging from classical portraits to modern abstracts. Every piece featured wolves in some form running, howling, watching with knowing eyes. How long has this estate been in Cale's family? Wendy asked. The Silvercrest pack claimed this mountain in 1743, Miss Thorne replied. The current structure was built in 1891, though it's been renovated extensively since then. Cale is the 9th alpha to rule from these walls. 9 generations of leadership. That's significant. Alphas don't inherit power through bloodline alone, Dr. Taylor. They earn it through strength, wisdom, and the pack's loyalty. Cale became alpha at 25 when the previous leader, his father, was killed defending our territory. Wendy caught the edge in Miss Thorne's voice. Killed by whom? Victor's rogues. 10 years ago, during what we call the Blood Moon Incursion, Miss Thorne's expression remained neutral, but her hands clenched briefly. Cale was barely more than a boy, but he rallied the pack, drove Victor's forces back, and claimed his father's position. He's been alpha ever since. They reached the medical room. Jordan was awake, sitting upright on the examination table in human form, looking remarkably healthy for someone who'd had a bullet dug out of his lung less than 12 hours ago. Dr. Taylor. His face lit up with a grin that made him look even younger than 20. Miss Thorne said you saved my life. Thank you doesn't really cover it, but thank you. Wendy approached cautiously, her medical instincts kicking in. How are you feeling? Any pain? Difficulty breathing? A little sore, but nothing major. The wound is already healing, see? Jordan pulled aside the bandage she'd placed last night. The surgical site that should have been angry and inflamed looked weeks old, the edges knitting together with impossible speed. That's... Wendy leaned in, fascinated despite herself. That's extraordinary. In humans, this would take at least 2 weeks to reach this stage of healing. Perks of being LYCAN, Jordan said cheerfully. We heal fast. Cale says it's because we exist partially in both human and wolf forms simultaneously, so our bodies are always in a state of active repair. I don't really understand the science, but it's handy when you get shot. You seem remarkably calm for someone who nearly died. Jordan's grin faded. I'm not, really, but Alpha says fear is natural, it's what you do with it that matters. And right now, what I'm doing with it is thanking the human who stuck around to help instead of running. He held out his hand. I'm Jordan Reeves. Official pack reading, since we kind of skipped that part last night when I was bleeding everywhere. Wendy shook his hand, noting the calluses and the strength in his grip. Wendy Taylor. And you're welcome. Though I was just doing my job. Your job is treating pets in a small-town clinic, not performing emergency surgery on a LYCAN during a territory war. That's above and beyond, Dr. Taylor. Jordan's amber eyes, so different from Cale's silver gold, held genuine warmth. You're pack now. As far as I'm concerned, even if you're the weird human kind of pack. I'm not pack. I'm just helping. That's what pack does. We help each other, protect each other. You did that last night, which makes you one of us. Jordan swung his legs off the examination table, moving with surprising ease. Come on. Breakfast is probably getting cold. And Alpha doesn't like it when people skip meals. Says a healthy pack needs proper nutrition and regular routines. Miss Thorne led them to a dining room that could have seated 30 people comfortably. Instead, breakfast had been set up at one end of the long table: coffee, fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, bacon, and what looked like homemade bread still warm from the oven. Cale sat at the head of the table, reading something on a tablet, a coffee cup at his elbow. He looked up as they entered, and Wendy felt that same electric awareness she'd experienced when they'd shaken hands last night. Jordan, you should still be resting. Cale's tone was stern but fond. I'm fine, Alpha. Dr. Taylor fixed me up perfectly. Jordan dropped into a chair and immediately started loading his plate with alarming amounts of food. Besides, I heal fast. You know that. Fast healing doesn't mean you should push it. Cale's gaze shifted to Wendy. Dr. Taylor, how did you sleep? Better than expected, considering. Wendy took a seat, trying not to feel self-conscious in her wrinkled clothes. Though I'll need to get some things from my apartment if I'm staying more than a day or two. Already arranged. Miss Thorne sent a trusted pack member to collect essentials this morning. They'll be in your room by noon. Cale poured her a cup of coffee without asking, somehow knowing she took it black. We also created a cover story for your absence. Your receptionist believes you've been called away for a family emergency in Seattle. Your bills are being paid automatically. Your clinic is being managed by a temporary replacement doctor, Sarah Chen from Portland. Excellent credentials. Highly recommended. Wendy's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. You found a replacement veterinarian overnight? Miss Thorne is very efficient. I'm sitting right here, Miss Thorne said dryly from the doorway. And yes, I am. Dr. Chen jumped at the opportunity. Apparently she's been looking to relocate somewhere quieter than Portland. If you like her work, we can arrange for her to stay on permanently as your associate. I can't afford an associate. The Silvercrest pack can. Cale set down his tablet. Consider it compensation for dragging you into our world against your will. Your clinic will be financially solvent when you return, Dr. Taylor. That much I can promise. Wendy wanted to argue, to insist she didn't need their money, that she'd managed fine on her own. But the memory of those red-stamped bills, the crushing weight of debt that had driven her to accept a mysterious house call in the first place, that memory made her swallow her pride. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet. You haven't heard the rest. The rest? Cale leaned back in his chair, his silver-gold eyes serious. The rogue who escaped last night was captured at dawn. He's being held in our security facility, and I need to interrogate him. Which means I need to know who sent him, what Victor knows, and whether there are more attacks coming. And you're telling me this because? Because interrogating rogues isn't pleasant, and you should know what you're living among. We're not just wealthy hermits who happen to turn into wolves, Dr. Taylor. We're a pack with territories to defend, laws to enforce, and enemies who want us dead. If that's too much for you, if you want to leave despite the danger, I'll understand. Wendy met his gaze. In the morning light, Cale looked tired, the shadows under his eyes suggesting he'd been up all night coordinating patrols and security. This man, this LYCAN, carried the weight of 43 lives on his shoulders, the responsibility of keeping them safe, fed, hidden from a world that would destroy them if it knew they existed. I'm staying, she said. I made a deal. And I keep my word. Something flickered in Cale's eyes, relief, maybe, or respect. Then after breakfast, I'll show you around the estate properly. You should know where everything is, meet more pack members. They're curious about you. Curious or hostile, both probably. You're an outsider, and outsiders are dangerous by definition. But you saved Jordan's life, which buys you significant goodwill. Cale's mouth curved slightly. Plus, the pack knows I've claimed responsibility for your safety. Anyone who harms you answers to me. Jordan snorted into his orange juice. That's Alpha speak for, touch her and I'll rip your throat out. Very romantic. Jordan. What? I'm just saying, the whole protective Alpha thing is pretty obvious. Jordan, if you value your other lung, You'll stop talking. The young LYCAN grinned unrepentantly but fell silent, shoveling eggs into his mouth instead. Wendy hid her smile behind her coffee cup. Despite the violence of last night, despite the impossibility of everything she'd witnessed, there was something almost normal about this moment. Breakfast banter. A leader trying to maintain dignity while his subordinate teased him. The comfortable rhythm of people who knew each other well. For just a moment, Wendy let herself forget that these people could transform into predators capable of tearing humans apart. After breakfast, Cale gave her a tour of Silvercrest Estate that bordered on overwhelming. The mansion was even larger than she'd realized, 3 full floors, plus a basement level that housed training facilities, a shooting range, and what Cale referred to as the vault, where PAC records and artifacts were stored. We have documents dating back to the 1600s, Cale explained as they walked through the ground floor. PAC histories, territorial agreements, records of every alpha who's ruled. My kind has a long memory, Dr. Taylor. We don't forget easily, and we don't forgive often. They passed a library that rivaled university collections. A commercial-grade kitchen where 2 LYCANs in human form were preparing lunch. And a wing of private apartments where PAC members lived. Not everyone stays on the estate full-time, Cale said. Some have jobs in town, apartments elsewhere, but this is home base. Where we gather for PAC meetings, where we retreat when threatened, where we celebrate our traditions. How many of your PAC members work in Moonridge? 15. We own several businesses, the hardware store, the gas station, the lumber company. It helps us maintain our cover and gives us early warning if anything unusual happens in town. Wendy stopped walking. You've essentially embedded yourselves in the local economy. We've been here for 3 centuries, Dr. Taylor. We are the local economy. Cale's expression was matter of fact. When the logging industry collapsed, it was Silvercrest PAC money that kept Moonridge from becoming a ghost town. We funded the school renovation, supported local businesses through the recession, ensured families could stay even when jobs disappeared. Why? Why not just let the town die and have the mountain to yourselves? Because we're not monsters. Cale's voice sharpened. We're part of this ecosystem, human and natural. When the town suffers, we feel it. When families struggle, we help. It's not charity, it's survival. A healthy territory means a healthy PAC. They continued walking, and Wendy found herself revising her understanding of LYCANs with every step. These weren't savage beasts hiding in the wilderness. They were organized, strategic, deeply embedded in the community they protected. The tour ended at a set of reinforced steel doors at the basement level. This is the security facility, Cale said, his tone shifting to something harder. Where we hold rogues who violate our territory. Where I'm about to interrogate the one who escaped last night. He turned to face her fully. You don't have to witness this. In fact, I'd prefer if you didn't. Why? Because interrogating rogues requires methods that will remind you what I am, what we all are beneath the civilized veneer. Cale's silver gold eyes held hers. I don't want you to look at me differently afterward. Wendy considered this. Part of her wanted to take the out, to remain ignorant of whatever happened behind those steel doors. But a larger part, the part that had demanded Cale prove LYCANs existed, the part that had stayed to help Jordan despite the danger needed to understand the full truth. I'm coming with you, she said. Dr. Taylor. Wendy. If we're going to be living in close quarters, you should probably use my first name. Cale's expression softened slightly. Wendy then, and you can call me Cale. The alpha title is for PAC formality. He paused. Last chance to change your mind. I'm not changing my mind. Stubborn. Thorough. There's a difference. Cale's mouth curved into something that was almost a smile. Then he pushed open the steel doors, and they descended into the darkness below. Chapter 5. Secrets in the Shadows. The security facility beneath Silvercrest Estate looked like something from a high-tech thriller. Concrete walls reinforced with steel plating, security cameras in every corner. A control room with monitors showing various angles of 3 holding cells, each one built to contain something far stronger than a human prisoner. 2 of the cells stood empty. The third held the rogue. He was in human form, a man who might have been handsome once, before whatever had happened to turn him rogue. Now his face was gaunt. His eyes that sickly yellow red Wendy remembered from last night. his skin carrying that same grayish tint that screamed wrong on a primal level. Shadow stood guard outside the cell in wolf form, his massive body utterly still except for his eyes, which tracked the rogue's every movement with predatory focus. Shadow volunteered for guard duty, Kale said quietly. He takes threats to the pack personally. Is he angry I operated on him without asking permission? He's grateful. LYCANs value competence and bravery. You showed both. Kale approached the cell, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. The casual, almost gentle man from breakfast vanished, replaced by something ancient and commanding. Shadow, report. The massive wolf shifted into human form, a man in his 30s with dark hair and a scar across his jaw that looked like it came from claws. Prisoner's been quiet. Alpha, no attempts to shift. No attempts to break containment. He knows what happens if he tries. Good, Kale's attention fixed on the rogue. You have a choice. Answer my questions truthfully, and you'll die quickly. Lie to me, and I'll let Shadow have you. He's been wanting revenge since you and your friends invaded our territory. The rogue laughed, a wet, rattling sound. You think I'm afraid of death? I've been dead inside since Victor threw me out of Blackridge. Might as well finish the job. Victor threw you out? I thought he sent you. He sent us. Yeah. But we were already rogues, already disposable. The man's yellow-red eyes gleamed with bitter amusement. Smart, really. If we succeed, Victor gets intelligence about Silvercrest defenses. If we fail, he loses nothing. Just a few rogues nobody cares about. Kale's expression didn't change, but Wendy saw his hands clench. What intelligence was Victor looking for? The human. The rogue's gaze slid to Wendy, and she fought the urge to step back. Victor heard rumors that you'd taken in a human who knows our secret. He wanted confirmation, wanted to see if the great Kale Silvercrest had finally gone soft, protecting some weak human female instead of killing her like the old laws demand. The old laws haven't required execution for accidental exposure in 50 years. Tell that to the Cascade Pack. Victor wiped them out 3 years ago, when one of their members got drunk and shifted in front of a hiking group. The rogue's smile was vicious. 27 LYCANs, dead in a single night. Men, women, children, all because Victor convinced the Pack Council that the Cascade Pack had become a liability. Wendy's blood turned cold. Children? LYCAN children shift earlier than you'd think. By age 6, most pups can transform at will. The rogue's attention remained on her, clearly enjoying her horror. Victor had them killed anyway. Said they'd been exposed to humans who'd seen their parents shift, so they were compromised. The council agreed, declared it justice. Kale's voice cut through like a blade. Victor manipulated the council. The Cascade Pack was the only barrier between his territory and the northern migration routes. He wanted their land, so he manufactured a reason to eliminate them. Maybe. Doesn't change the fact that your precious Pack Council signed off on it. The rogue leaned forward, as close to the cell bars as he dared. And they'll sign off on killing your human pet too, Kale. The moment Victor brings evidence to them, the moment he proves she knows our secret, the council will demand her death. You know they will. The council knows I don't bow to demands. Even when those demands come with an army. The rogue's grin widened. Victor's been building his forces for years, recruiting rogues, absorbing smaller packs, making alliances. He's got over 200 LYCANs now, Kale. 200 against your 43. And once he convinces the council that you're harboring a human who threatens our entire species, he'll have legal justification to attack Silvercrest. Exactly. You're not just protecting some random human, Alpha. You're giving Victor exactly what he needs to destroy everything you've built. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Wendy's mind raced through the implications. She wasn't just a person caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was a weapon. Evidence that Kale had violated some fundamental LYCAN law by letting her live. How did Victor know about Dr. Taylor? Kale asked, his voice dangerously soft. Someone in your pack is feeding him information. Has been for months. The rogue seemed to enjoy dropping this particular bomb. That's how we knew about the private phone line. That's how we knew to expect a human showing up at Silvercrest. Victor has eyes inside your territory, Kale. Someone close to you is betraying everything you've built. Shadow snarled, a sound that made every primitive instinct in Wendy's body scream run. Kale raised one hand, and Shadow fell silent immediately. Names. Who's the traitor? Victor didn't tell us. Said it was need to know. And rogues don't need to know. The man shrugged. But I can tell you this, it's someone with access to your private communications. Someone you trust. Someone who's been watching your movements closely enough to know when you'd be vulnerable. When did Victor give you this information? 3 days ago. Right after your human called the Alpha line, the rogue's yellow-red eyes glittered. Victor was thrilled. Said he'd been waiting for you to make a mistake like this. Said it was the final piece he needed. Kale was silent for a long moment, his silver-gold eyes distant, calculating. Then, Shadow, prepare an Alpha summons. I want every pack member in the Great Hall tonight at sunset. Mandatory attendance, no exceptions. Yes, Alpha. Shadow shifted back to wolf form and loped toward the stairs. And the prisoner? Shadow's voice echoed in Wendy's mind before she realized the wolf must have some way of telepathic communication with Kale. Keep him alive until after the pack meeting. I may have more questions. The rogue laughed. Postponing my execution? How merciful. Don't mistake strategy for mercy. You're alive because you're useful. The moment that changes. Kale let the threat hang. He turned and walked toward the stairs, clearly expecting Wendy to follow. She did, grateful to leave the oppressive atmosphere of the security facility behind. They climbed in silence until they reached the ground floor. Kale led her to a different room this time, a smaller study, more intimate than the grand space from last night. He closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly looking exhausted. I'm sorry you had to hear that. About the children? Wendy's voice came out harsher than intended. That Victor murdered children and the Pack Council approved it? The council was manipulated. Victor is very good at making his violence look justified, at framing his land grabs as necessary security measures. Kale moved to a cabinet and poured 2 glasses of whiskey, despite the early hour. The Cascade Pack massacre haunts me. I argued against the council's decision, fought to have the children at least spared and relocated. I was outvoted 4-1. You're on this council? I'm required to be. The 6 remaining packs each send their alpha to council meetings twice a year. We settle disputes, vote on policy changes, adjudicate violations of pack law. Kale handed her a glass. Victor controls 2 votes now, his own pack, plus the Black Ridge territory he absorbed from the Cascade lands. That gives him enormous influence. Wendy took the whiskey but didn't drink. The rogue said Victor has 200 LYCANs. Is that true? Close to it. He's been aggressive about recruitment, offering sanctuary to rogues in exchange for loyalty. Most packs won't touch rogues, they're unstable, dangerous, loyal only to themselves. But Victor doesn't care about stability. He cares about numbers. And you have 43 LYCANs who've been with me through hell, who've proven their loyalty over decades, not days, who'd die to protect this territory and each other. Kale finally drank his whiskey. Quality versus quantity, Wendy. Victor's army might be large, but it's fractured. Mine is unified. Will that be enough if he attacks? I don't know. The admission seemed to cost him. Victor has been positioning himself for years, waiting for an opportunity. And now, thanks to whoever gave you that phone number, he has one. Wendy set down her untouched whiskey, anger building in her chest. So I'm the problem. I'm the excuse he needs to justify war. You're not the problem, the traitor is. Kale's silver-gold eyes locked on hers. Someone in my pack deliberately put you in danger, knowing it would give Victor ammunition. That same someone has been feeding him information, compromising our security, undermining everything we've built. That's who I need to find. And what happens when you do? Kale's expression went cold. Pack law is absolute. Traitors are exiled at best. At worst. He didn't finish the sentence, but Wendy understood. Death, swift and permanent. Your pack meeting tonight, you're going to accuse someone of treason in front of everyone? No. I'm going to give the traitor a chance to confess. And I'm going to make it very clear what the consequences will be if I have to hunt them down myself. Kale moved to the window, staring out at the forest. This pack is my family, Wendy. Every single member has sworn loyalty to me, and I've sworn to protect them in return. The idea that one of them could betray that bond hurts more than any physical wound. Wendy finished softly. Yes. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on both of them. Finally, Wendy spoke. What do you need me to do? Cale turned back to her, surprise flickering across his features. I'm not going to sit around helplessly while you deal with this mess. I'm a veterinarian, which means I'm trained to observe, diagnose, and solve problems. So tell me, what can I do to help? Something shifted in Cale's expression, respect mixing with something warmer, something that made Wendy's pulse quicken despite the circumstances. The PAC meeting tonight. You should attend. Me? I'm not PAC. You are now, whether you intended to be or not. Jordan was right this morning, you saved one of ours. That creates a bond in LYCAN culture, a debt that transcends species. Cale crossed back to her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. If you attend the meeting, if you stand with me publicly, it sends a message. That Silvercrest PAC protects its own, human or LYCAN, that we don't abandon people who've proven their worth. It also paints an even bigger target on my back. Yes. Which is why I won't force you. This has to be your choice, Wendy. Wendy thought about Jordan's easy acceptance this morning, about Miss Thorne's efficient competence, about Shadow's grateful nod before he'd volunteered for guard duty. These people, these LYCANs, had welcomed her into their world despite every reason to see her as a threat. And Victor, whoever he was, had murdered children and called it justice. I'll attend, Wendy said. But I need appropriate clothes. I didn't pack for formal PAC meetings. Cale's mouth curved into an almost smile. Miss Thorne will handle it. She has excellent taste. He hesitated, then added, Thank you. For staying. For not running when most humans would have fled screaming. I'm terrified, Wendy admitted. I'm so far out of my depth I can't even see the surface anymore. But running won't make this go away. If Victor already knows about me, if there's a traitor feeding him information, then I'm in danger whether I'm here or in Moonridge. At least here. I have 43 LYCANs between me and whatever's coming. 43 LYCANs and one very determined alpha. Cale's voice dropped lower. I meant what I said last night. Anyone who harms you answers to me. That's not just PAC law, Wendy. That's personal. The air between them felt charged, electric. Wendy was acutely aware of how close Cale stood, how his silver-gold eyes seemed to see straight through her, carefully maintained composure to the fear and fascination warring beneath. Why? She asked quietly. Why do you care? You barely know me. I don't know. But I do care. And that terrifies me almost as much as Victor's army. Cale stepped back, breaking the moment. Get some rest before tonight. PAC meetings can be intense, especially when the alpha is about to accuse someone of treason. He left before Wendy could respond, the door closing softly behind him. Wendy sank into a chair, her hands trembling. In less than 48 hours, her entire world had been turned upside down. LYCANs were real, territorial wars were brewing, children had been murdered. And somehow, impossibly, she'd become central to a conflict that could destroy everything Cale had built. I should run, her rational mind whispered. I should get in my truck and drive until I hit the Canadian border and never look back. But she wouldn't, because Jordan's grateful smile was real, because Cale's protective instinct was real, because somewhere in this impossible nightmare, Wendy had found something she'd been missing in her ordinary life. Purpose. A knock on the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Dr. Taylor? Miss Thorne entered, carrying several garment bags. I took the liberty of selecting appropriate attire for tonight's PAC meeting. Nothing too formal, but elegant enough to show respect for tradition. I've also arranged for you to meet some PAC members this afternoon, informal introductions before the formal gathering tonight. Wendy stood, grateful for the distraction. Miss Thorne, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think there's really a traitor in the PAC? Miss Thorne's expression remained neutral, but her eyes hardened. I've served Silvercrest PAC for 30 years, Dr. Taylor. I've watched this family survive attacks, betrayals, and losses that would have destroyed weaker PACs. If Cale says there's a traitor, then there is one, and when he finds them... She set down the garment bags with precise care. I'll be first in line to deliver their punishment. The steel in her voice made Wendy believe every word. Tonight will reveal much, Miss. Thorne continued. About the traitor, about Victor's plans, and about whether you truly belong here. I suggest you prepare yourself, Dr. Taylor. PAC meetings are where loyalty is tested and alliances are forged. By the time the moon rises, everything will have changed. She left Wendy alone with the garment bags, and the growing certainty that tonight would either cement her place in this strange new world or destroy her completely. Outside the window, clouds gathered on the horizon like an approaching storm. Chapter 6. The Traitor Revealed. Wendy spent the afternoon meeting PAC members under Miss Thorne's careful supervision. Each introduction felt like a test she hadn't studied for, assessing glances, cautious questions, the weight of 43 sets of eyes judging whether she belonged. First was Elena, a woman in her 50s who ran the PAC's finances with the precision of a Fortune 500 CFO. Her handshake was firm, her smile polite but reserved. "So you're the human who saved Jordan. He won't stop talking about you." Then came Thomas and Rebecca, a mated pair who managed the lumber company in Moonridge. They were warmer, easier, asking about her clinic and seeming genuinely interested in her veterinary background. "We've got 3 dogs at home," Rebecca said with a laugh. "Maybe you could check them over sometime. They're technically pets. Not PAC, but we love them anyway." "Marcus, no," Wendy caught herself. Cale had said not to use that name. She met Michael instead, a quiet man in his 30s who served as the PAC's head of security. His eyes were sharp, assessing, taking in every detail of her posture and expression. "You handled yourself well during the attack," he said. "Most humans would have frozen. You moved toward the danger instead of away from it. I'm a veterinarian. Moving toward danger is part of the job description." Michael's mouth quirked. "Fair enough. But treating a wounded LYCAN during a firefight? That takes something more than training. That takes courage." He glanced at Miss Thorne. "She'll do fine tonight." By the time Wendy had met 24 PAC members, her head was spinning with names and faces and the complex web of relationships that held Silvercrest together. Families, friendships, rivalries, romantic entanglements, all of it visible in the way they spoke to each other, the way they moved through shared space. This wasn't just a PAC. It was a community, a culture unto itself. "Time to get ready," Miss Thorne announced as the afternoon light began to fade. "The meeting starts at sunset, which gives you approximately 90 minutes. Back in her guest room, Wendy opened the garment bags Miss Thorne had provided. Inside was a dress that somehow walked the line between elegant and practical, deep forest green, long sleeves, hem falling just below the knee. The fabric felt expensive, probably silk or something equally luxurious. A pair of low heels completed the outfit, along with simple silver jewelry that caught the light. Wendy showered, grateful to wash away the anxiety sweat from an afternoon of being scrutinized. She dried her hair, letting it fall in loose waves around her shoulders, and applied minimal makeup. She'd never been good at cosmetics, and tonight didn't seem like the time to experiment. The dress fit perfectly, hugging her curves without being revealing. When Wendy looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked confident, composed, like someone who belonged at a supernatural PAC meeting instead of a small-town veterinarian drowning in debt. "Fake it until you make it," she told her reflection. A knock on the door. "Dr. Taylor, it's time." Cale stood in the hallway, and Wendy's breath caught. He'd changed into formal attire, dark slacks, a charcoal gray shirt that brought out the silver in his eyes, a black jacket that emphasized his broad shoulders. His hair was slightly damp, suggesting he'd showered recently, and he'd shaved the stubble that had shadowed his jaw this morning. He looked like power incarnate, ancient and modern all at once. "You look..." Cale paused, his silver gold eyes traveling over her in a way that made heat bloom in her chest. "Beautiful. That color suits you. Miss Thorne has good taste." "She does." Cale offered his arm, the gesture oddly formal. "Ready?" "No. But I'm doing it anyway." His mouth curved into something that might have been pride. "That's the spirit." They walked through the mansion's hallways side by side, Wendy's hand resting lightly on Cale's arm. The gesture felt both intimate and symbolic, the alpha and his. What? Protected human? Honorary PAC member? Potential liability? Later, Wendy told herself. Worry about definitions later. The Great Hall was located on the ground floor, past the library, and down a corridor Wendy hadn't explored during her tour. The double doors stood open, and inside, pack members were already gathering. The room took Wendy's breath away. Cathedral ceilings soared overhead, supported by massive timber beams carved with wolves and forests and moons in various phases. Windows stretched from floor to ceiling on 3 sides, offering panoramic views of the darkening forest. A stone fireplace large enough to stand in dominated the 4th wall, flames already crackling behind an ornate metal screen. But it was the pack that truly commanded attention. 43 LYCANs filled the space, some seated in chairs arranged in a loose semicircle, others standing in clusters, all of them turning to watch as Cale and Wendy entered. The collective weight of their attention felt like a physical force. Wendy recognized faces from this afternoon. Elena, Thomas, Rebecca, Michael, Jordan. Others were strangers, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile to carefully neutral. Kyle led her to the front of the room, where a raised platform held a single chair carved from dark wood. The Alpha's seat, clearly. He guided Wendy to a smaller chair positioned slightly to the side and behind his, close enough to show protection, far enough to indicate she wasn't claiming equal status. "Stay here," Cale murmured. "No matter what happens, stay in this seat. Do you understand?" "Yes. I mean it, Wendy. Pack justice can be brutal. I need to know you won't interfere." The intensity in his voice made her nod. "I won't interfere, I promise." Cale's hand squeezed hers briefly, a gesture of gratitude or reassurance, she couldn't tell which. Then he released her and moved to stand in front of the Alpha's chair, his posture shifting into something commanding and ancient. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the great hall without shouting. "Silvercrest Pack, I've called this gathering under Alpha authority, invoking the right of immediate assembly. All pack members are present and accounted for." "All present. Alpha," Michael confirmed from his position near the doors. "Then we begin." Cale's silver-gold eyes swept across the assembled LYCANs. 24 hours ago, our territory was breached by 5 rogues armed with silver bullets. 4 were killed. 1 was captured. During the attack, Jordan Reeves was critically wounded and would have died if not for the skill of Dr. Wendy Taylor. All eyes turned to Wendy. She forced herself to meet their gazes steadily, refusing to show the fear churning in her stomach. "Dr. Taylor is human," Cale continued. "She knows our secret. Under old law, this would require her immediate execution to protect pack security. But I invoke the healer's exception. A human who saves LYCAN life without malicious intent is granted sanctuary and protection. Does anyone challenge my invocation?" Silence. No one moved. No one spoke. "Then it's affirmed. Dr. Taylor is under Silvercrest protection. Any pack member or external threat who harms her answers to me personally." Cale paused, letting the weight of his declaration settle. "Now, to the matter of why rogues breached our territory in the first place." He recounted the interrogation, leaving out nothing: Victor's plans, the traitor feeding information, the deliberate attempt to compromise Silvercrest by exposing Cale's protection of a human. As he spoke, Wendy watched the pack's reaction: shock, anger, fear, and on one face near the back a flicker of something else. Guilt, maybe? Or calculation? "Someone in this room betrayed us," Cale said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "Someone gave my private phone number to an outsider, knowing it would create exactly this situation. Someone has been feeding Victor information about our movements, our vulnerabilities, our secrets." The great hall erupted in voices, denials, accusations, demands for justice. Cale raised one hand, and silence fell immediately. "I will find the traitor, but first I'm offering a choice." His eyes scanned the crowd with predatory focus. "Confess now, publicly, and I promise you exile instead of death. You'll have until dawn to leave Silvercrest territory and never return. Your name will be struck from pack records, but you'll live." No one moved. "Or," Cale continued, "I hunt you down myself. And when I find you, and I will find you, your death will be neither quick nor merciful. The entire pack will witness your execution as a warning to anyone else who considers betrayal." The silence now was suffocating. Wendy could hear her own heartbeat, the crackle of the fire, the soft sounds of LYCANs breathing in their agitation. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Then, from the back of the hall, a figure stepped forward. It was a young woman, maybe 25, with auburn hair and amber eyes red-rimmed with tears. Wendy recognized her from the afternoon introductions. Lily something. She worked at the hardware store in Moonridge. Alpha. Lily's voice shook. I need to say something. The entire pack turned to stare. Cale's expression remained neutral, but Wendy saw his hands clench. Speak, Lily. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt. I swear I didn't. Tears streamed down Lily's face now. Victor approached me 6 months ago in town. Said he just wanted information about Silvercrest, nothing dangerous. Said he was concerned about you isolating the pack, keeping us too separate from other LYCANs. He made it sound like he was trying to help. So you gave him my private number. Cale's voice was flat, emotionless. He said it was just to establish a direct line of communication. That the pack council was concerned about Silvercrest becoming too insular. I thought. Lily's voice broke. I thought I was helping, making sure we had allies if things went wrong. And when rogues attacked our territory, when Jordan was shot, when Dr. Taylor's life was put in danger, each question was a blade, cutting deeper. Did you think you were helping then? I didn't know. Victor never said anything about rogues or attacks. He just asked questions about your schedule, about security rotations, about whether you'd been in contact with any humans. Lily looked desperately around the hall, seeking support and finding only cold stares. Please, Alpha. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I never wanted anyone to die. Cale stepped down from the platform, moving toward Lily with that fluid predator's grace. The crowd parted to let him through, and Wendy saw several pack members actively turning their backs on the young woman. A symbolic rejection. You gave Victor everything he needed to plan an attack on our home, Cale said quietly. You compromised our security, endangered our pack, and violated the most fundamental law. We have loyalty above all else. Whether you intended harm doesn't matter, Lily. The result is the same. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Lily collapsed to her knees, her whole body shaking with sobs. Please, Alpha, please. I'll do anything. I'll spend my life making this right. Cale looked down at her for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried to every corner of the hall. I offered you exile if you confessed. You've confessed. So exile it is. He turned to address the full pack. Lily Hartwell is hereby stripped of pack status. She has until dawn to gather her belongings and leave Silvercrest territory. If she's found within our borders after sunrise, she will be killed on sight. Does anyone object? No one objected. Not even Lily herself, who simply knelt on the floor weeping. Michael, escort Lily to her quarters and ensure she packs only personal belongings. No pack resources, no technology, nothing that could be used to harm us further. Cale's tone was final, absolute, and spread the word to neighboring territories. Lily Hartwell is exiled and unwelcome. Any pack that harbors her becomes an enemy of Silvercrest. Michael moved forward, helping the sobbing woman to her feet and leading her from the great hall. The doors closed behind them with the finality of a tomb ceiling. Cale returned to the platform, but he didn't sit. Instead, he addressed the remaining pack members with renewed intensity. Victor has been building toward war for a decade. He murdered the Cascade Pack and called it justice. He's amassing an army of rogues and broken LYCANs. And now he has evidence that we're harboring a human who knows our secret evidence he'll use to convince the Pack Council to sanction an attack on Silvercrest. So what do we do, Alpha? Elena asked. Her CFO voice steady despite the circumstances. Do we prepare for war? We prepare for survival, which means I'm invoking ancient right. Every pack member capable of combat will undergo intensive training starting tomorrow. Michael will coordinate schedules, will fortify our borders, increase patrols, and establish emergency protocols. Cale's silver-gold eyes swept across his pack. Victor wants a war. We'll give him one he'll never forget. The pack erupted in voices again, but this time it was determination rather than fear. Battle cries and pledges of loyalty, promises to defend Silvercrest to the death. Wendy watched it all from her seat, humbled and terrified in equal measure. These people, these LYCANs, were preparing to fight a war. And somehow, impossibly, She was part of the reason why. Cale raised his hand, and silence fell once more. One final matter. Dr. Taylor has proven herself a valuable ally and healer. Until the threat from Victor is neutralized, she'll remain under my personal protection as an honorary pack member. Anyone who questions this decision can challenge me directly. He paused, his gaze turning predatory. And we all know how those challenges end. No one spoke. No one moved. Then this gathering is concluded. Return to your duties, strengthen your bonds, and remember we are Silvercrest. We've survived for 3 centuries, and will survive 3 centuries more. No rogue alpha with delusions of grandeur will destroy what we've built. The pack dispersed slowly, many stopping to offer words of support to Cale or nods of acknowledgement to Wendy. Jordan approached with his characteristic grin, though his eyes were serious. That was intense. You okay? I've been better, Wendy admitted. I didn't expect. Lily seemed so young. She was young and stupid, and now she's exiled. Jordan's expression hardened. Traitors don't get sympathy, Dr. Taylor. Not after what they cost us. After the hall emptied, Cale finally sank into the alpha's chair, suddenly looking exhausted. Wendy moved to his side without thinking, placing a hand on his shoulder. You did what you had to do. Doesn't make it easier. Cale's hand came up to cover hers. Lily's been packed since she was born. I watched her grow up, saw her take her first shift at age 7, and now she's alone in the world because Victor manipulated her fear and inexperience. She made a choice. Maybe not understanding the full consequences, but still a choice. I know. But exile is a death sentence for most LYCANs. Without a pack, without community. He trailed off. She'll probably end up with Victor anyway, begging him to take her in, offering to continue spying in exchange for protection. Would he accept her? Probably. Victor collects broken things and uses them until they're no longer useful. Then he discards them. Cale stood, still holding Wendy's hand. Come on, let's get out of here. I need air that doesn't smell like betrayal and fear. They walked out onto a balcony overlooking the forest, the night air cool and clean. The moon was rising, 3/4 full, painting everything in silver light. In the distance, Wendy could hear wolves howling, pack members running the borders, patrolling for threats. Do you think Victor will attack soon? She asked. Within the month, if I had to guess. He'll want to move before we can fully fortify, while we're still reeling from Lily's betrayal. Cale leaned against the balcony railing, staring out at the wilderness. I've been preparing for this fight for 10 years. Since the night he killed my father and I became alpha. I just never expected. What? That I'd have someone to lose beyond the pack itself. His silver gold eyes found hers in the moonlight. You complicate things, Wendy. In the best and most terrifying way possible. Wendy's heart hammered against her ribs. Cale, I'm not asking for anything. I'm just stating a fact. In 3 days you've become important to me in ways I don't fully understand. And Victor knows that, which makes you more than just a liability or evidence. It makes you a target. Then we deal with it, together. Wendy stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. You're not alone in this, Cale, not anymore. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. But then he stepped back, breaking the moment. You should rest. Tomorrow starts your education about LYCAN culture, and Miss Thorne is a demanding teacher. His smile was strained, and I have approximately 1,000 things to coordinate before Victor makes his move. Cale. Good night, Wendy. Thank you for standing with me tonight. It meant more than you know. He left her alone on the balcony, the sound of his footsteps fading into the mansion's depths. Wendy stood in the moonlight, her hand pressed against her chest where her heart still raced, and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. Whatever it was, there was no going back now. Chapter 7. Forbidden Feelings. The next 3 days passed in a blur of education and transformation. Miss Thorne proved to be as demanding a teacher as Cale had warned. She drilled Wendy on pack hierarchy, the difference between alphas, betas, and omegas, the intricate web of dominance and submission that governed LYCAN society, the unspoken rules that maintained order without constant violence. An alpha's word is law within their territory, Miss Thorne explained over breakfast on the second day. But that authority is earned, not inherited. Kale became alpha by defeating 3 challengers after his father's death. He was barely 25, still grieving, and had to prove he was strong enough to lead 3 challengers at once, one at a time, over the course of a week. Each challenge is a fight to submission or death. Kale chose submission for the first 2 pack members who genuinely believed they'd be better leaders. But the third? Miss Thorne's expression darkened. The third was a plant from Victor, a rogue sent to kill Kale and destabilize Silvercrest from within. What happened? Kale ripped out his throat in front of the entire pack. Then he tracked down the 2 rogues who'd helped sneak the challenger into our territory and executed them at the border as a warning. Miss Thorne met Wendy's eyes. Our alpha is capable of great gentleness, Dr. Taylor. But never mistake gentleness for weakness. Wendy didn't. She saw Kale's strength every day in the way pack members deferred to him instinctively, in how his presence could silence a room or command absolute attention. But she also saw his burden. The weight of 43 lives resting on his shoulders, the constant calculations about security and resources and threats. He worked 18-hour days, coordinating border patrols, overseeing combat training, meeting with Elena about finances, and Michael about defensive strategies. Wendy caught glimpses of him at meals, in hallways. Once at midnight when she couldn't sleep and found him in his study surrounded by maps and tactical reports. You should rest, she'd said that night. I'll rest when Victor is no longer a threat. So, never. His smile had been tired, self-deprecating. How are Miss Thorne's lessons going? Is she terrorizing you appropriately? She's thorough. I now know more about LYCAN mating bonds than I ever thought possible. Ah. The infamous mating bond lecture. Kale had looked almost embarrassed. Miss Thorne takes that particular subject very seriously. The mating bond, Wendy had learned, was the LYCAN equivalent of soulmates, a rare connection between 2 LYCANs whose wolves recognized each other as perfect complements. When a bond formed, it was permanent, unbreakable, deeper than marriage or any human concept of partnership. How rare is it? Wendy had asked Miss Thorne during that particular lesson. Perhaps 1 in 50 LYCANs finds their true mate. The rest form companionate bonds, partnerships built on compatibility and affection, rather than the soul deep recognition of a mating bond. Miss Thorne had studied Wendy with unsettling intensity. But when the bond does form, it's unmistakable. Both parties feel it simultaneously, a pull, a rightness. As if the universe itself is confirming their connection. Can it happen between a LYCAN and a human? The question had slipped out before Wendy could stop it. Miss Thorne's expression had shifted into something knowing, almost amused. Theoretically, yes. Though it's exceptionally rare. Most LYCANs prefer their own kind, there's less explaining required, less risk of exposure. But the bond doesn't discriminate based on species. If 2 souls are meant to be together, the bond will form regardless. Now, on the morning of the 4th day, Wendy found herself in the estate's training facility watching pack members prepare for combat. The underground space was enormous, easily the size of a commercial gym, with padded floors, weapons racks, and specialized equipment Wendy couldn't identify. LYCANs in both human and wolf forms moved through drills with terrifying efficiency. Michael supervised, his voice sharp and commanding. Faster. Victor's rogues won't wait for you to remember your footwork. Again, Wendy watched 2 LYCANs sparring, one in human form, using hand-to-hand combat techniques, the other in wolf form, using speed and agility to counter. The human fighter feinted left, then dropped low, sweeping the wolf's legs out from under it. The wolf rolled with the momentum, shifted mid-roll into human form, and came up swinging. Impressive, isn't it? Wendy turned to find Jordan beside her, his shoulder fully healed, wearing workout clothes and carrying a water bottle. It's terrifying. I've never seen people move like that. We're not people. Not entirely. Jordan took a drink, watching the sparring match with professional assessment. That's what makes us dangerous. We've got human intelligence and strategic thinking combined with wolf instincts and physical capabilities. In a fight, we're nearly unstoppable. Nearly? Silver still hurts like hell. Decapitation or catastrophic brain trauma will kill us permanently. And emotional manipulation, that's our biggest weakness. Turn us against each other, create division within the pack, and we crumble. Jordan's amber eyes flicked to her. Which is exactly what Victor tried to do with Lily. Have you heard anything about her? Where she went after the exile? Rumors say she showed up at Blackridge territory 2 days ago. Victor took her in, just like Alpha predicted. Jordan's voice hardened. She'll give him everything: guard rotations, defensive weaknesses, personal information about pack members. By the time Victor attacks, he'll know exactly where to strike. Wendy's stomach clenched. Can't Kale do something? Stop her from sharing information? She's exiled, outside our jurisdiction. And honestly, Jordan's expression went cold. Most of the pack hopes she does talk. Because when Victor attacks using information Lily provided, it'll justify what we do to her when we catch her again. Exile might have been merciful. But helping Victor after being shown mercy, that's unforgivable. Before Wendy could respond, Kale entered the training facility. He'd changed into workout gear, fitted black tank top and athletic pants that showed off his powerful build. Every conversation stopped. Every LYCAN immediately stood at attention. At ease, Kale said, his voice carrying authority even in casual settings. Continue your drills. Michael, I'm taking Dr. Taylor for a demonstration. We'll be in training room 3. Yes, Alpha. Kale gestured for Wendy to follow him. They walked through the facility to a smaller, private training room with padded walls and controlled lighting. Once inside, Kale closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly looking hesitant. I need to teach you something, he said. Something you're not going to like. Wendy's pulse quickened. Okay, how to defend yourself against a LYCAN attack. Basic survival techniques if Victor's rogues get past our defenses. Kale pushed off the door, moving to the center of the room. I know you're not a fighter. I know this goes against your medical training, your instinct to heal rather than harm. But if I'm going to keep you safe, you need to know how to buy yourself time until help arrives. You want to teach me to fight werewolves. I want to teach you to survive werewolves. There's a difference. Kale's silver gold eyes were serious. Will you let me? Wendy thought about the rogues from that first night. About Victor's reputation for cruelty. About the war brewing on Silvercrest's borders. Thought about what would happen if she was caught alone and defenseless when the fighting started. Yes. Teach me. For the next hour, Kale demonstrated basic techniques: where to strike a LYCAN in human form to cause maximum pain. Throat, eyes, groin, joints. How to use an attacker's momentum against them. How to recognize when a LYCAN was about to shift, and what that meant for her defensive strategy. If they shift to wolf form, you're in serious trouble, Kale explained, moving through a defensive sequence in slow motion. Wolves are faster, stronger, more agile than humans. Your only advantages are intelligence and unpredictability. Use them. He had her practice blocks and strikes, correcting her form with the patience of an experienced teacher. His hands on her arms, her shoulders, her waist, adjusting her stance, guiding her movements. Each touch was professional. Focused. But Wendy felt the electricity anyway, the awareness that hummed between them whenever they were close. Good, Kale said, after she successfully executed a defensive combination. Now faster. Rogues won't attack in slow motion. They ran through the sequence again. Kale increasing his speed until Wendy was breathless and sweating, her muscles burning with the unfamiliar effort. She missed a block, and Kale's hand stopped inches from her throat, close enough that she felt the heat of his skin, saw the predatory gleam in his eyes that said his wolf was close to the surface. Dead, he said quietly. That's how long you'd last against a real attacker. 3 seconds. Encouraging. Honest. Kale stepped back, running a hand through his hair. I'm not trying to scare you, Wendy. But you need to understand what you're up against. Victor's rogues are trained killers. They won't hesitate, won't show mercy, won't care that you're a civilian caught in the middle of pack politics. So what do I do? Hide in my room until this is over? No. You stay close to pack members at all times. You learn these defensive techniques until they're instinct, and you trust that I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe. His voice dropped lower. Because I will, Wendy, even if it costs me everything. The intensity in his voice made something warm and dangerous bloom in Wendy's chest. She stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his silver eyes. close enough to feel his breath against her face. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why do you care so much about protecting me? Is it pack law? The healer's exception?" "No." Cale's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "It stopped being about pack law the moment I shifted in front of you and you didn't run screaming. When you looked at the monster and saw something else. You're not a monster. I've killed people, Wendy. Torn them apart with teeth and claws. Executed pack members for treason. Hunted rogues through these mountains and left their bodies as warnings." His expression was tortured. "I'm exactly what humans fear in the darkness. You're a leader protecting his people. That's not monstrous. That's necessary." Wendy's hand covered his where it rested against her face. "And for what it's worth, when I look at you, I see someone carrying an impossible burden with as much honor as he can manage. I see someone who showed mercy to a traitor when he could have chosen violence. I see—" Cale kissed her. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate and consuming, like he'd been holding back for days and finally couldn't manage it anymore. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, and Wendy responded without thinking, rising on her toes, pressing against him, kissing him back with equal intensity. He tasted like coffee and something wild, something that called to a part of Wendy she hadn't known existed. His body was solid heat against hers, all muscle and controlled power, and when he growled low in his throat, she felt it vibrate through her entire being. They broke apart, breathing hard, Wendy's back against the padded wall, Cale's forehead pressed against hers. That was— Wendy couldn't find words. A mistake. Cale's voice was rough, strained. "I shouldn't have." "Don't." Wendy grabbed his shirt, refusing to let him pull away. "Don't you dare call that a mistake. Wendy, I'm an alpha. You're human. This can't." "Can't what? Can't work? Can't be real?" She forced him to meet her eyes. "I felt something when we touched the first time. I know you felt it too. And just now, that kiss complicated everything." Cale's hands framed her face, his expression agonized. "You deserve normal, Wendy. A human partner who can give you a regular life. Not a LYCAN alpha with a target on his back and a war brewing at his borders. What if I don't want normal? What if I want this, whatever this is between us? Then you're as crazy as I am." But Cale was smiling now. A real smile that transformed his features from severe to devastating. "Because I can't stop thinking about you. Can't stop wanting to protect you, to keep you close, to—" He cut himself off. "This is dangerous territory, Wendy. For both of us. I'm already in dangerous territory. I'm living with a pack of werewolves while another pack wants me dead. Adding romance to the mix can't make things that much worse." Cale's laugh was unexpected and genuine. "Romance. Is that what we're calling this? I'm open to other terminology. How about terrifying and inevitable?" His thumb brushed across her lower lip, his eyes tracking the movement with predatory focus. "Because that's what this feels like trying to stop an avalanche with my bare hands." Before Wendy could respond, a sharp knock on the training room door made them spring apart like guilty teenagers. "Alpha?" Michael's voice carried through the door. "We have a situation. Border Patrol found something you need to see." Cale's entire demeanor shifted from vulnerable man to commanding alpha in an instant. "I'll be right there." He turned back to Wendy, his expression serious. "We'll continue this conversation later. But right now, you need to be the alpha, I understand." Wendy straightened her clothes, trying to ignore her still racing heart. "Go." "I'll be fine." Cale hesitated at the door. "Stay in the estate. Don't go outside without pack escort. Promise me." "I promise." He left, and Wendy was alone with the memory of his kiss, burning on her lips, and the certainty that everything had just changed between them. She made her way back to her guest room, her mind spinning. A LYCAN alpha and a human veterinarian. It sounded like the setup to a bad romance novel. Not something that could actually work in reality, but the way Cale had kissed her, the desperation and need, and something deeper she didn't dare name that had felt real. More real than anything in her carefully constructed ordinary life had ever felt. Wendy was still processing this when she reached her room and found Miss Thorne waiting in the hallway, her expression grave. "Dr. Taylor. The situation Michael mentioned. It's bad. Border Patrol found tracks." "What kind of tracks?" LYCAN. At least 50, maybe more, all heading toward Silvercrest from Blackridge territory. Miss Thorne's usual composure cracked slightly. Victor is coming. And based on the tracks, he's bringing his entire army. Wendy's blood turned to ice. How long do we have? 3 days. Maybe 4 if we're lucky. Miss Thorne's hand rested on the door handle to Wendy's room. Cale is calling an emergency council meeting. He wants you there. As his... She paused, choosing her words carefully. As someone whose opinion he values. The weight of those words settled over Wendy like a mantle. She wasn't just a protected human anymore. She was becoming something more, a trusted advisor. Maybe. Or something even more complicated. I'll be there, Wendy said. Just tell me when and where. As Miss Thorne left, Wendy moved to her window and stared out at the forest. Somewhere in those trees, Victor's army was gathering. Rogues and broken LYCANs, all of them preparing to attack Silvercrest and take everything Cale had built. And at the center of it, all the excuse Victor would use to justify his violence was Wendy herself. The human who knew too much, the weakness in Cale's armor. But I don't have to be a weakness, Wendy thought, her hands pressed against the cool glass. I can be a strength. She just had to figure out how before Victor's army arrived, and the mountain ran red with blood. Chapter 8. War Council. The War Council convened in Cale's study an hour later, a smaller, more intimate gathering than the pack meeting. Only the senior members attended: Shadow, Michael, Elena, Thomas, Rebecca, and Miss Thorne. And Wendy, seated in a chair slightly behind Cale's desk, feeling simultaneously honored and terrified to be included. A large topographical map of the mountain spread across Cale's desk, marked with colored pins and hand-drawn annotations. Michael stood beside it, pointing to various locations as he spoke. The tracks we found suggest Victor is staging his forces here. He indicated a valley approximately 15 miles northeast of Silvercrest Estate. It's defensible, has water access, and provides multiple approach routes to our territory. Classic military strategy. How many? Cale asked, his voice clipped and professional. Difficult to say with certainty, but based on track patterns and spacing, I'd estimate between 80 and 100 LYCANs. Significantly more than the 200 the rogue claimed. He lied to inflate Victor's strength, Shadow said from his position near the window. He'd remained in human form for the meeting, his scarred face grim. Or Victor has been more successful at recruitment than we realized. Either way, we're outnumbered at least 2 to 1. Elena's financial mind immediately calculated the odds. Even with home territory advantage, those aren't favorable numbers. We've beaten worse odds before, Rebecca interjected, though her voice lacked conviction. The Blood Moon incursion was 10 years ago, when we had 52 pack members and Victor had barely 30 rogues, Thomas interrupted gently. This is different, love. This is Victor with an army and pack council authorization to attack. We don't know he has council authorization yet, Cale said, though his expression suggested he believed otherwise. Victor is clever, but the council has denied his territorial expansion requests before. They won't sanction an attack without evidence. He has evidence now. All eyes turned to Wendy as she spoke. Me. A human who knows your secret. Isn't that what the old laws say? That humans who discover LYCANs must be eliminated to protect the species? The old laws have evolved, Miss Thorne said firmly. The healer's exception won't matter to the council if Victor frames this correctly. Wendy stood, moving to the map. He'll argue that I'm not just a healer who stumbled into your world. He'll say I was deliberately exposed by a security breach, which is true. He'll claim that letting me live sets a dangerous precedent that could expose all LYCANs, which he believes. And he'll demand that you either execute me or face council sanctions. The room fell silent. Cale's silver-gold eyes locked on hers, and she saw the fear beneath his carefully maintained composure. If it comes to that, Wendy continued quietly, if the council demands my death to prevent this war, no. Cale's voice was absolute. We're not discussing this. Cale. If my death could save 43 lives. I said no. He stood, his presence suddenly filling the room like a physical force. Victor doesn't want you dead, Wendy. He wants me to refuse to kill you. He wants evidence that I've gone rogue, that I've prioritized a human over pack law. Your death solves nothing, it just gives him different ammunition to use against us. Then what do we do? Shadow asked. Wait for Victor to attack and hope we can hold him off. We prepare for siege warfare. Michael tapped several locations on the map. Fortify these access points. Mine these trails with silver-based deterrents. Establish fallback positions if they breach the outer defenses. We turn Silvercrest Estate into a fortress and make Victor pay for every inch of ground he takes. Siege tactics mean we're trapped here, Elena pointed out. No access to town, no ability to resupply. How long can we hold out? 3 weeks, maybe a month if we ration carefully. Elena had clearly already run the numbers. After that, we start running out of food, medical supplies, ammunition. Victor knows this, Shadow said darkly. He'll starve us out if he has to. Pin us here while he consolidates control over the rest of the territory. Cuts off any potential allies. What allies? Rebecca's voice was bitter. The other packs won't risk Victor's wrath by helping us. We're on our own. The hopelessness in the room was suffocating. Wendy watched Cale's jaw clench, saw the weight of impossible choices pressing down on him. He was the alpha, the leader, the one who had to find a solution when none existed. Think, Wendy told herself. You're a veterinarian. You solve problems for a living. There has to be something. What if we don't wait for Victor to attack? The words came out before Wendy fully formed the thought. Everyone turned to stare at her. Explain? Cale said. Victor wants me, right? Or at least, he wants to use me as evidence against you. So what if we give him what he wants? Wendy moved to stand beside Cale, her finger tracing a path on the map. What if I leave Silvercrest? Make it look like I've fled because I'm terrified of being caught in a war zone. I head toward Blackridge territory, not all the way there, but close enough that Victor's scouts find me. Absolutely not. Cale's voice was cold. You're suggesting we use you as bait. I'm suggesting we use me as a distraction. If Victor thinks he has easy access to the human witness, he might delay his attack. He might expose his position trying to capture me instead of besieging the estate. Wendy met Cale's furious gaze steadily. It gives you time to fortify, to call in whatever favors you're owed, to prepare properly instead of reacting to his timeline. She's not wrong strategically, Michael said slowly, clearly thinking through the tactical implications. Victor's entire justification for attacking relies on Wendy's existence as evidence. If she's no longer under our protection, if she appears to be fleeing, he'll send a capture team instead of his full army, Shadow finished. Smaller force, more manageable. We could set up an ambush, eliminate key members of his leadership before the main assault. Or he could kill her the moment his rogues find her, Cale snapped. This plan requires Wendy to deliberately put herself in mortal danger with no guarantee of survival. I won't actually be alone, Wendy argued. You send trackers with me, LYCAN's Victor doesn't know about. They stay hidden, watch my back. Extract me if things go wrong. Everything could go wrong. Cale's control finally cracked. Victor is a sadist who murdered children to prove a point. Do you honestly think he'll handle you gently? That he won't torture you to get information about Silvercrest defenses? Which is why the extraction happens before he gets me to Blackridge territory. Your trackers grab me the moment Victor's scouts make contact. We eliminate the scouts, and we have prisoners of our own to interrogate. Wendy's voice was steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. It's risky, but it's better than sitting here waiting to be slaughtered. The room erupted in argument, Shadow and Michael debating tactical details, Elena calculating risk percentages, Thomas and Rebecca expressing concerns about using a civilian as bait. But Wendy only watched Cale, saw the war raging behind his silver-gold eyes. Finally, he raised one hand, and silence fell immediately. Everyone out except Wendy and Miss Thorne. The senior pack members filed out, though Shadow lingered at the door. Alpha, if you need. I need privacy for this conversation. Go. Once they were alone, Cale turned to Wendy with an expression of such raw anguish it made her chest ache. You have no idea what you're offering, he said quietly. I have every idea. I'm offering to be the target instead of letting your entire pack become one. Victor will hurt you. That's not a possibility, Wendy. That's a certainty. He'll hurt you to hurt me. To prove that I'm weak for caring about a human. Cale's hands clenched into fists. I've seen what he does to people he wants to break. I won't subject you to that. It's not your choice. Wendy's voice was gentle but firm. I'm not Pack. I'm not bound by your authority. If I choose to leave Silvercrest territory, you can't stop me. I could lock you in your room, post guards, keep you here by force. You could, but you won't. Because that's not who you are. Kale turned away, his shoulders rigid with tension. For a long moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fireplace, and the distant sounds of pack members moving through the estate. There might be another option, Miss Thorne said quietly. Both Kale and Wendy turned to look at her. The pack council convenes in 2 weeks for their regular seasonal meeting. If we can get a formal hearing before then, if we can present our case directly, Victor will block it, Kale said. He controls 2 votes on the council. He only needs 1 more to prevent any hearing that might undermine his position, unless we invoke ancient challenge. Miss Thorne's voice was steady, but her eyes held something dark. Alpha against alpha. Single combat to settle the territorial dispute before the council. Wendy saw Kale's entire body go still. That law hasn't been invoked in over a century, because most alphas are too civilized or too cowardly to risk their lives in single combat. But you're neither, Kale. And Victor has been publicly questioning your strength for years. If you challenge him directly, he can't refuse without losing face in front of the entire council. And if I lose? Kale's voice was flat. If Victor kills me in front of the council, then Silvercrest Pack becomes absorbed into Blackridge under Victor's rule. We lose everything. Miss Thorne moved to stand beside her alpha. But if you kill Victor in sanctioned combat, his army collapses. Rogues scatter without a leader to hold them together. The territorial dispute ends permanently in our favor. You're asking me to bet everything on a single fight. I'm offering you a way to protect your pack without sacrificing Dr. Taylor, which, if I'm reading this situation correctly, is your primary concern at the moment. Miss Thorne's knowing look made Wendy blush. Kale rubbed his face, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. The council won't convene an emergency session for a challenge. It would take weeks to coordinate, and Victor could attack before then. So we buy time. Wendy spoke up again. My plan still works as a short-term strategy. I leave, draw Victor's attention, give you breathing room to arrange the council challenge. You rescue me before anything truly terrible happens, and then you face Victor in combat under official rules. There's so much that could go wrong with this plan. But Kale's tone had shifted from outright refusal to reluctant consideration. There's more that could go right, Wendy countered. And right now, this is the best option we have. If Victor's plan moved you or made you furious, please like this video. Kale studied her for a long moment, and Wendy felt the weight of his scrutiny. Finally, he turned to Miss Thorne. Contact Counselor Thane of the Northern Pack. He owes me a favor from the Cascade Aftermath. He was the only other alpha who voted against the massacre. Tell him I'm invoking Ancient Challenge, and I need him to sponsor the petition before the council. Yes, Alpha. Miss Thorne moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Kale, I believe you'll win. Victor is cunning, but you're stronger, and you have something he doesn't. What's that? Something worth fighting for beyond ambition and territory. Her eyes flicked meaningfully to Wendy before she left. Alone now, Kale crossed to where Wendy stood and pulled her into his arms. The embrace was tight, almost desperate, and Wendy felt him trembling slightly. If I lose you, he started. You won't. If Victor hurts you before we can extract you, I'll survive. I'm tougher than I look. I know you are. That's what terrifies me. Kale pulled back enough to look at her face, his silver gold eyes searching. You make me want things I thought I'd given up on when I became Alpha. Normal things. Simple things. A future that's more than just surviving until the next threat. Wendy's hand came up to cup his face. Then let's build that future. Together. But first we have to survive, Victor. Together, Kale echoed. He leaned down and kissed her, softer this time, gentle and lingering. A promise, rather than desperation. When they broke apart, Wendy saw the shift in his expression. The vulnerable man retreating. The Alpha emerging. The leader who would do whatever was necessary to protect his pack, even if it meant sending the woman he cared about into danger. We'll plan this carefully, Kale said, every detail accounted for. Shadow and Jordan will be your primary trackers. They're the best we have. Michael will coordinate the extraction team. And I, his voice roughened, I'll be monitoring everything from here. Ready to mobilize the full pack if anything goes wrong. When do we start? Tomorrow morning. We'll stage an argument in front of pack witnesses, make it look like you're terrified and want to leave. You'll pack your things, take your truck, head toward the main highway. Victor's scouts will pick up your trail within hours. And then we pray that I can reach you before Victor does anything irreversible. Kale's arms tightened around her one more time, and I call in every favor I'm owed to arrange the council challenge before he has time to consolidate power. Wendy rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady thrum of his heartbeat. In 4 days, her entire life had been transformed. She'd discovered an impossible world, saved lives she hadn't known existed, and fallen for a man who was so much more than human. Now she was about to risk everything, her safety, possibly her life, to protect a pack that had welcomed her when they had every reason to reject her. Wendy? Kale's voice rumbled through his chest. Yes? When this is over, when Victor is dead, and the pack is safe, I want to explore what this is between us. Properly. Without wars and death threats hanging over our heads. Is that an alpha command, or a request? She felt him smile against her hair. A request. And a promise. If you'll have me, I'll have you, Wendy said softly. Wolf and all, they stood there in the firelight, holding each other against the coming storm. And for just a moment, Wendy let herself believe that everything would work out, that she'd survive the next few days, that Kale would defeat Victor in combat, that they'd have a chance at the future they both wanted but were afraid to name. Outside the study windows, the moon rose higher, painting the forest in silver light, and somewhere in those trees, Victor's army prepared for war, unaware that the human they sought was about to walk willingly into their trap. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tonight, Wendy let herself hope. Chapter 9. The escape. The staged argument happened at breakfast, in front of the entire pack. Kale had coached Wendy the night before on how to make it believable. You need to seem genuinely terrified, he'd said, his voice clinical despite the tension in his jaw. Not of me specifically, but of the situation, of being trapped in a war you never asked to be part of. Now, watching him across the dining hall table, Wendy almost forgot they were acting. The cold fury in Kale's silver gold eyes looked real. The rigid set of his shoulders screamed barely contained violence. You knew what you were agreeing to when you stayed, Kale said, his voice carrying across the silent room. Every pack member had frozen, forks halfway to mouths, conversations dying mid-sentence. You don't get to change your mind now just because the situation has escalated. I agreed to help with medical care. Not to be bait in a territorial war. Wendy let her voice rise, let the genuine fear she'd been suppressing for days bleed through. You said I'd be safe here. I said I'd protect you. That doesn't mean hiding you from reality. Kale stood, his height and presence dominating the room. Victor is coming. Whether you like it or not. Running won't change that. But staying here makes me a target. Don't you understand? He's using me as an excuse to destroy everything you've built. Maybe if I leave, if I'm not under Silvercrest protection anymore, he'll kill you anyway. Kale's voice dropped to something dangerous. Do you think Victor cares about mercy? About letting witnesses live? You know our secret, Wendy. That alone is a death sentence in his eyes. Then I'm dead either way. Wendy stood too, her chair scraping against the floor. At least if I run, I'm not taking 43 LYCANs down with me. The silence that followed was suffocating. Wendy could feel the pack's eyes on her, some sympathetic, some angry, most just confused about why their alpha and the human he'd been protecting were suddenly at each other's throats. If you leave Silvercrest territory, you're on your own. Kale's voice was cold, absolute. I won't send pack members after you. I won't risk their lives for someone who doesn't trust me to keep them safe. Fine. Wendy grabbed her coffee cup and threw the contents in Kale's direction, not hitting him, but close enough to make the gesture clear. I'll be gone within the hour. She stormed out of the dining hall, her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. Behind her, she heard the explosion of voices, pack members demanding to know what was happening. Whether their alpha was really letting the human leave, whether this was a test of some kind. Shadow intercepted her in the hallway outside her room, his expression carefully neutral. That was quite a performance. Was it believable? Jordan's already planning to sneak out and follow you to make sure you're okay. Thomas is arguing with Michael about whether the Alpha has lost his mind. And Elena is calculating how much it'll cost to hire external security to replace you if Victor actually kills you. Shadow's scarred face softened slightly. Yeah. It was believable. Good. Wendy entered her room and found her bag already packed. Miss Thorne's efficiency at work. The older woman stood by the window, holding a small black device about the size of a thumb drive. GPS tracker, Miss Thorne explained. Sewn into the lining of your jacket. Military grade. Can't be detected by standard scanners. Shadow and Jordan will be able to follow your location anywhere within a 100-mile radius. And if Victor's people find it, they won't. But if they do, it's programmed to look like a standard consumer tracker, the kind concerned family members might put on someone who wanders off. Miss Thorne's hands were steady, but her voice held an edge. Dr. Taylor, you should know that if anything happens to you, if this plan fails, there won't be anything left of Victor's forces to tell the story. Cale will burn Blackridge to the ground. I know. Wendy shouldered her bag, testing the weight. That's why I have to make sure nothing goes wrong. Arrogant. Assuming you have that kind of control. But Miss Thorne's faint smile held approval. Shadow and Jordan are waiting in the garage. They'll give you a 30-minute head start before they follow. The extraction plan activates the moment Victor's scouts make contact, 10 minutes maximum before the team moves in. Do not try to be heroic. Do not resist capture if it comes to that. Let them think they've won. And if they hurt me before the extraction team arrives? Miss Thorne's expression went cold. Then pray Victor values information more than revenge. Because the alternative... She didn't finish the sentence. Wendy made her way to the garage, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallways. Most pack members were still in the dining hall, probably dissecting every word of the argument they'd witnessed. Her truck sat in the corner, looking absurdly ordinary next to the luxury vehicles that filled the rest of the space. Shadow and Jordan waited in wolf form beside it, Shadow's massive black shape and Jordan's slightly smaller gray form. Both sets of eyes tracked her approach with unsettling intelligence. Thank you, Wendy said quietly, for doing this. I know it's dangerous. Jordan shifted to human form, utterly unself-conscious about his nudity. LYCANs apparently had very different standards about bodies than humans. You saved my life, Dr. Taylor. This doesn't even begin to repay that debt. Besides, his grin was pure mischief. I've been wanting to hunt Victor's rogues for years. This gives me an excuse. Stay safe out there, Wendy said. Both of you. She climbed into her truck, started the engine, and drove away from Silvercrest Estate without looking back. The last thing she saw in her rearview mirror was Cale standing on the mansion's front steps, his silver-gold eyes tracking her departure with an expression of such controlled anguish it made her chest ache. This is the right choice, she told herself. This buys time. This gives us a chance. But as the estate disappeared behind the trees and she headed toward the main highway, doubt crept in like cold water. What if Victor killed her before the extraction team could intervene? What if she'd miscalculated? And this plan got people killed instead of saving them. Too late now, Wendy thought grimly. Committed. The drive toward Blackridge territory took her through increasingly remote forest roads. Cell service died after the first 20 minutes. GPS became unreliable after 30. Wendy drove by instinct, and the hand-drawn map Michael had provided a route that would take her close enough to Victor's staging area to be noticed, but not so close that she'd drive straight into his army. An hour into the drive, Wendy felt the prickle of awareness that said she was being watched. She checked her mirrors but saw nothing except trees and shadows. Still, the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each mile. Victor's scouts. They had to be. Come on, Wendy thought. Take the bait. Let's get this over with. Another 20 minutes passed. The forest grew denser, darker, the road deteriorating from gravel to barely their track. Wendy was beginning to wonder if she'd somehow missed the scout positions when her truck's front tire exploded. The vehicle swerved violently. Wendy fought the wheel, managed to avoid slamming into a tree, and ground to a halt in a shallow ditch. Her heart hammered as she assessed the situation. Flat tire, middle of nowhere. No cell service. Perfect trap scenario. Wendy grabbed the tire iron from behind her seat, laughably inadequate against LYCANs, but better than nothing, and climbed out of the truck. The forest was silent. Too silent. No birds, no small animals rustling in the undergrowth. Just oppressive quiet that made every hair on her body stand at attention. "I know you're out there," Wendy called, trying to keep her voice steady. "Might as well show yourselves." For a moment, nothing. Then, from the trees, 3 figures emerged. They were in human form, all male, all carrying that wrongness that marked them as rogues. Yellow-tinted eyes, grayish skin, movements that were just slightly off from natural human grace. The one in front was tall, lean, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. Well, the Alpha's little human pet, all alone in the woods. His voice was rough, amused. "Victor's going to be very pleased. I'm not Kale's pet, I left." Wendy backed toward her truck, keeping the tire iron raised. "I want nothing to do with any pack wars. I just want to go home." "Bit late for that, sweetheart. You've seen too much. Know too much." The rogue circled closer, his companions flanking. "But don't worry. Victor wants you alive, at least. For now. He's got questions about Silvercrest defenses, about the Alpha's plans. You're going to answer them, and if I refuse?" The rogue's smile was vicious. "Then we hurt you until you change your mind. Victor doesn't care what condition you're in, as long as you can talk." Wendy's extraction window had just started. 10 minutes. She needed to stall for 10 minutes without getting seriously injured or dragged too far from this location. "How did you find me so quickly?" "Keep them talking. Buy time. We've been tracking you since you left Silvercrest." "Did you really think Kale would let his pet wander off without surveillance?" The rogue laughed. "Your Alpha is predictable. Soft. Cares too much about individual lives to make the hard choices. That's why Victor's going to win. You sound pretty confident for someone working for a leader who sends rogues to do his dirty work." The rogue's eyes flashed yellow. "Careful, human. You're not in a position to insult anyone. Just making an observation. If Victor's so powerful, why isn't he here himself? Why send expendable scouts? Why? We're not." The rogue cut himself off, realizing he'd been baited. His hand shot out, grabbing Wendy's wrist and yanking her forward. The tire iron fell from her grip. "Enough talk. You're coming with us." That's when Shadow and Jordan attacked. They came from opposite directions, 2 massive wolves moving with coordinated precision. Shadow hit the rogue, holding Wendy, his jaws closing around the man's shoulder. Jordan took down the rogue on the left, his teeth finding the man's throat before he could scream. The third rogue shifted to wolf form, pale gray, smaller than either Shadow or Jordan but fast. He lunged at Wendy, clearly intending to grab the hostage before the rescue team could stop him. Wendy dove sideways. Remembering Kale's training. Use their momentum against them. She rolled, came up with a rock in her hand, and threw it at the rogue's face. It connected with a satisfying thunk, and the wolf yelped, momentarily stunned. That moment was all Shadow needed. He released the first rogue, who was down but not dead, and slammed into the third with enough force to crack bones. The pale wolf went limp, unconscious or dead. Silence fell. 3 rogues down in less than 30 seconds. Shadow shifted to human form, blood staining his mouth. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "Are they?" 2 dead, 1 unconscious. "Good for interrogation." Shadow hauled the surviving rogue, the one who'd grabbed Wendy, to his feet. The man was barely conscious, his shoulder torn open and bleeding heavily. "Jordan, secure the perimeter. Make sure these 3 didn't have backup." Jordan, still in wolf form, loped into the forest. Shadow zip-tied the rogue's hands behind his back with brutal efficiency, then turned to Wendy. "GPS says the main extraction team is 3 minutes out. We need to move your truck and stage this scene to look like the rogues took you. Victor needs to believe his scouts succeeded. At least temporarily." "Why?" "Because if he thinks we intercepted them immediately, he'll know it was a trap. This way he'll commit more resources to searching for you, which diverts attention from Silvercrest defenses." Shadow was already working, dragging the 2 dead rogues toward the tree line. Help me hide the bodies." They worked quickly, hiding the dead rogues and arranging the scene to look like a struggle. Wendy's bag torn open, contents scattered, her truck's door left hanging open. It looked convincing, like someone had fought capture and lost. The extraction team arrived as promised, Michael and 3 other LYCANs in a blacked-out SUV. They loaded the unconscious rogue into the back, confirmed Wendy was unharmed, and prepared to transport everyone back to Silvercrest. "Wait," Wendy said. "How long can we maintain the illusion that Victor's scouts have me?" Michael exchanged glances with Shadow. "Maybe 6 hours before he expects a report." "Why?" "Because 6 hours is enough time to plant false information, enough time to make Victor think he's won this round." Wendy's mind was racing, seeing possibilities. What if we let his scout escape back to Black Ridge with deliberately misleading intel about Silvercrest defenses? "He'll be tortured first," Shadow warned. "Extensively. Victor will want to make sure any information he provides is genuine. So we make the information convincing enough to pass scrutiny. We tell him things that are partially true, things Victor can verify through his other intelligence sources. But we leave out key details: the silver mines on the South Trail, the reinforced bunker beneath the estate, the fact that Kale is arranging a council challenge." Wendy looked between the assembled LYCANs. "Can we make that work?" Michael's expression shifted from skeptical to intrigued. "It's risky. If Victor realizes the information is planted, he'll know we intercepted his scouts. But if he believes it, we control the narrative. We make him think he has the upper hand, which makes him overconfident. Overconfident enemies make mistakes." Shadow grinned, fierce and approving. "The Alpha is going to love this. Or hate it. Possibly both." He hauled the unconscious rogue out of the SUV. "Let's wake him up and start the education process." The next 3 hours were some of the most morally complicated of Wendy's life. They didn't torture the rogue, not technically. But Shadow's interrogation techniques were brutal enough that Wendy had to step outside twice to compose herself. By the time they were done, the rogue believed he'd escaped through sheer determination and luck. He believed Wendy had been recaptured by Silvercrest forces but had revealed significant defensive weaknesses during questioning. He believed Victor's attack would face minimal resistance if timed correctly. None of it was true, but the rogue believed every word. They released him at the edge of Blackridge territory, bloodied and terrified, with carefully planted false intelligence burning in his mind. He ran without looking back, desperate to report his success to Victor. "Think he bought it?" Wendy asked as they drove back toward Silvercrest. "We'll know soon enough," Michael said. "If Victor adjusts his attack plan based on that information, we'll see it in his troop movements." "Shadow, keep deep scouts on Blackridge borders. I want to know the moment anything changes." "Already arranged." They reached Silvercrest Estate as evening fell. Kale stood on the front steps again, and this time when Wendy climbed out of the vehicle, he crossed to her in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms. "Never again," he said against her hair. "Never again." "It worked, Kale. We intercepted the scouts, planted false intelligence, and Victor thinks he's winning." "I don't care." His arms tightened. "When Shadow reported the rogues had made contact, when I saw them grab you through his shared vision," his voice broke. "I've never been that terrified in my life." Wendy pulled back enough to look at his face. His silver gold eyes were wild, more wolf than man, and she could feel him trembling with the effort of maintaining control. "I'm okay. I'm here. Your plan worked. My plan almost got you killed." Kale's hand cupped her face with devastating gentleness. "Miss Thorne was right. I'm not thinking clearly where you're concerned. I'm making decisions based on emotion, instead of strategy. Maybe that's not a bad thing. It's a terrible thing. Alphas can't afford." He cut himself off, his expression shifting. "We'll discuss this later. Right now you need medical attention, food and rest." "Miss Thorne?" The older woman appeared as if summoned. "Guest room is prepared. I'll have dinner sent up. Dr. Taylor looks exhausted." "I'm fine. You're crashing from adrenaline and need to process what you just experienced," Miss Thorne said firmly. "Come on. I'll run you a bath." As Miss Thorne led her inside, Wendy looked back at Kale. He stood in the fading light, surrounded by pack members demanding updates, his shoulders set in that familiar rigid line that said he was carrying the weight of the world. "We're going to survive this," Wendy thought. We have to. But deep down, she knew the hardest part was still ahead. Victor had been given false information, but he wasn't stupid. Eventually, he'd realize he'd been played, and when that happened, when his rage at being outsmarted overcame his strategic planning, the mountain would burn. Chapter 10. The Alpha's Challenge. 3 days later, everything changed. Wendy woke to the sound of howling, not the mournful calls of patrol wolves, but something triumphant, celebratory. She dressed quickly and found the entire pack gathered in the great hall, their faces alight with an emotion she hadn't seen since arriving at Silvercrest. Hope. Cale stood at the front of the room, holding a formal document with an ornate seal. His silver-gold eyes found hers immediately, and the smile that transformed his face made her breath catch. Counselor Thane came through, he announced to the assembled pack. The Pack Council has accepted my ancient challenge. In 5 days, I face Victor in single combat before the full council. Winner takes both territories. Loser. He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what happened to the loser. The pack erupted in cheers, but Wendy felt ice slide down her spine. 5 days. In 5 days, Cale would fight Victor to the death, and if he lost, everything the pack, the territory, her would belong to a monster who murdered children. After the announcement, Cale found her in the library where she'd retreated to process the news. You're not celebrating, he observed, closing the door behind him. You're going to fight Victor, alone, in a fight where one of you has to die. Wendy's voice shook. Forgive me if I'm not throwing a party. Cale crossed to where she stood by the window, his movements careful, as if approaching a spooked animal. I've been training for this fight for 10 years. Every day since Victor killed my father, I've prepared for the moment when I'd face him in combat. What if you're not ready? What if he's stronger? He's not. Cale's voice held absolute certainty. Victor is cunning, manipulative, politically savvy. But in pure combat, I'm stronger, faster, more skilled. I will win this fight, Wendy. You can't know that. Yes, I can, because I have something Victor doesn't, something worth fighting for beyond territory and power. His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. I have you, and I will not lose you to that sadistic bastard. Wendy's hands came up to cover his. What happens after? If you win? When I win, Cale corrected. Victor's forces scatter. Blackridge territory becomes part of Silvercrest. The Pack Council recognizes my authority over the entire mountain range. And you, he hesitated. You get to choose what comes next. Stay with us. Return to your normal life. Anything. No more obligations. No more danger. You think I'd leave? After everything? I think you deserve the choice. Without war and death threats hanging over your head. Without feeling trapped by circumstances. Cale's thumb traced her cheekbone. I want you to stay. God, I want that more than I've wanted anything in my life. But I want you to choose it freely. Before Wendy could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. Alpha. Michael's voice was urgent. We have a situation. Victor's forces are moving. All of them, heading directly toward our borders. Cale's entire demeanor shifted instantly. How long? They'll reach our outer perimeter in 3 hours. Maybe less. He's attacking before the council challenge. Cale's voice was cold with fury. He knows the false intelligence was a trap, knows we outmaneuvered him, and he's forcing a confrontation on his timeline instead of the council's. They raced to Cale's study, where Michael had set up a command center. Maps covered every surface, marked with red pins showing Victor's advancing forces. The numbers were staggering: over 90 LYCANs, moving in coordinated groups, surrounding Silvercrest from 3 directions. Classic pincer movement, Shadow said, pointing to the map. He's trying to cut off our escape routes, while overwhelming our defenses through sheer numbers. Evacuation protocols? Cale asked. Already initiated. Non-combatants are being moved to the underground bunker. Elena is coordinating supplies and medical stations. Michael's jaw was tight, but Alpha, even with the bunker and our defensive positions, we're outnumbered 2 to 1. We can hold for maybe 6 hours before we're slaughtered, Cale finished bluntly. Victor is betting that the council won't intervene in time to stop him, that by the time they arrive to oversee the challenge, Silvercrest will already be destroyed and I'll be dead. Can you reach the council? Tell them Victor is violating the challenge agreement by attacking early, Wendy asked. Communication will take hours, and mobilizing council forces will take days. We don't have that kind of time. Cale's hands pressed flat against the map, his shoulders rigid. Victor has outmaneuvered us. The false intelligence bought us 3 days, but not enough. Not nearly enough. The despair in the room was suffocating. Wendy watched the senior pack members exchange glances that said they all knew this might be their last stand. 43 LYCANs against 90. Honorable combat against overwhelming numbers. Think, Wendy told herself desperately. There has to be something. What if we don't fight? The words tumbled out before she'd fully formed the thought. Everyone turned to stare at her. Explain, Cale said. Victor wants a fight. He wants to overwhelm your defenses, kill your pack, prove he's stronger. So what if we give him exactly what he doesn't expect? Wendy moved to the map, her finger tracing the approach routes. What if we surrender? Absolutely not. Cale's voice was flat. I will not hand my pack over to Victor's mercy. He has none. Not real surrender. Staged surrender. We evacuate everyone to the bunker. Make it look like we've abandoned the estate. When Victor's forces arrive, they find an empty fortress. No resistance, no combat, nothing to fight. They'll search for us, Michael pointed out. Find the bunker eventually. Not if we're not there. Wendy's mind was racing now, seeing the strategy. We evacuate through the bunker's emergency exit, the one that comes out 5 miles east. We move the entire pack into the deep forest. Stay mobile, avoid detection. Victor wastes time and resources searching an empty estate while we're miles away. And then what? Shadow asked. We hide forever while Victor claims our territory? No. We wait 48 hours, long enough for Counselor Thane to reach us with council forces. Once the council arrives, Cale invokes the challenge again under their direct supervision. Victor can't refuse with the council watching, and he can't attack Silvercrest without violating council law. Wendy looked at Cale. It's not honor, it's not a fair fight, but it keeps your pack alive long enough to force Victor into the combat he's been trying to avoid. The silence that followed was heavy with consideration. Finally, Elena spoke. The logistics are manageable. We have supplies cached in multiple locations throughout the forest. The pack can survive rough camping for a few days. Her financial mind was already calculating. It's not ideal, but it's survivable. It's also cowardly, Thomas said quietly. Running from our own territory. It's strategic, Rebecca countered. Living to fight another day instead of dying in a battle we can't win. It's survival, Cale said, his voice cutting through the debate. And survival is never cowardly, it's smart. He turned to Michael. How long to evacuate everyone through the bunker exit? 2 hours if we move fast. Less if we leave non-essential items behind. Then we leave everything behind. Lives matter more than possessions. Cale's gaze swept across his senior pack members. Spread the word. Full evacuation in 30 minutes. Pack only essentials, medical supplies, food, weapons. Everything else stays. The command center exploded into coordinated chaos. Pack members rushing to gather supplies. Parents corralling children. Fighters checking weapons and ammunition. Wendy stood in the center of it all, watching a 3-century-old pack abandon their ancestral home because of a plan she'd suggested. Please let this work. She prayed to no one in particular. Please. Cale found her as the evacuation proceeded. That was brilliant strategy. Risky, unconventional, but brilliant. Or it gets everyone killed in the forest instead of in the estate. Still haven't decided which. Either way, you bought us options we didn't have 10 minutes ago. His hand found hers, squeezing tight. Stay close to me during the evacuation. If anything goes wrong, I know. Stay with the Alpha, follow orders, don't be heroic. Wendy managed a weak smile. You've told me approximately 1,000 times, then I'll tell you 1,000 more until you're safe. The evacuation proceeded with military precision. 43 LYCANs. Moving through the underground bunker system that Wendy hadn't known existed until now. The tunnels were old reinforced stone and timber that smelled of earth and age. Emergency lights illuminated their path as they descended deeper beneath the estate. Jordan appeared at Wendy's side, carrying an unconscious child. A little girl, maybe 6 years old. who'd apparently panicked at the thought of leaving her toys behind and had to be sedated. "Her name is Mira," Jordan said quietly. "She's the youngest of our pack. Just had her first shift last month, turned into the cutest little wolf pup you've ever seen. Her parents died 2 years ago in a car accident. Cale has been raising her." Wendy looked at the sleeping child, then at Cale walking ahead of them, his shoulders set with determination. "He never mentioned. He wouldn't. Alpha doesn't talk about his personal life. But he's been Mira's guardian since she was 4, teaches her how to shift, reads her bedtime stories, attends every school function." Jordan's voice was fond. "That's who Victor wants to destroy. A man who reads bedtime stories to orphan children and calls it duty." The emergency exit opened into a cave system 5 miles from the estate, just as Michael had promised. They emerged into darkness, the forest thick around them, and immediately split into smaller groups for easier concealment. Cale coordinated everything, assigning scouts, establishing rendezvous points, making sure families stayed together. He worked with the focused intensity Wendy had come to recognize, the Alpha caring for his pack even as their world crumbled. 2 hours after evacuating, they were positioned in a deep ravine 7 miles from Silvercrest Estate when the first explosions echoed across the mountain. Victor had arrived. Wendy watched smoke rise in the distance, heard the sounds of destruction carrying through the forest. Victor's forces were tearing apart the estate, searching for the pack that wasn't there. She imagined their frustration at finding empty rooms, abandoned possessions, no one to fight or kill or torture. Cale stood at the ravine's edge, his silver-gold eyes fixed on the smoke, his expression carved from stone. Shadow and Michael flanked him, equally silent. "He'll burn it," Shadow said quietly. "When he realizes we're gone, he'll burn the estate to the ground out of spite." "Let him." Cale's voice was flat. "Buildings can be rebuilt. Lives can't be replaced." They waited in the ravine as night fell, as the distant sounds of destruction continued, as Victor's rogues systematically demolished 3 centuries of Silvercrest history. Wendy sat with little Mira now awake, and terrified, singing soft songs to distract the child from the sounds of her home being destroyed. 48 hours. They just needed to survive 48 hours until the council arrived. On the second day, scouts reported Victor's forces spreading out into the forest, searching for the evacuated pack. "Hunting. He knows we're out here," Michael said during a whispered strategy session. "He's not giving up. He's going to hunt us down systematically. Then we keep moving," Cale said. "Stay ahead of his search patterns. We're faster in our own territory, we know every trail, every hiding spot. Use that advantage." They became ghosts in the forest, moving through terrain so difficult that Victor's rogues unfamiliar with Silvercrest's landscape couldn't track them effectively. They split into even smaller groups, reuniting at designated points, always staying 1 step ahead of the hunters. Wendy learned what it meant to be packed during those 2 days. Saw how LYCANs protected their young, shared resources without question, trusted each other with their lives. She watched Cale transform from commanding alpha to protective father figure to strategic genius, adapting to every challenge Victor threw at them. On the evening of the second day, Counselor Thane arrived. He came with 20 council enforcers, neutral LYCANs sworn to uphold pack law. They found Silvercrest's evacuated pack in a hidden valley, still intact, still alive. Thane was an older LYCAN, maybe 60. With silver hair and amber eyes that had seen centuries of pack politics, he embraced Cale like family. "Impressive survival strategy," Thane said, surveying the evacuated pack. "Victor thought he'd wiped you out. He's been bragging to the other council members about how Silvercrest fell without a fight." "Good," Cale said coldly. "Let him be overconfident, let him think he's won, and then let him face me in sanctioned combat and learn exactly how wrong he is. The council convenes at dawn tomorrow. The challenge will proceed as agreed, you against Victor. Single combat to the death. Winner takes all territories, loser's pack is absorbed into the victors. Standard ancient challenge rules." Thane's expression was grave. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready for 10 years. That night, Cale found Wendy sitting alone at the edge of their camp, staring at the stars visible through the forest canopy. "Can't sleep?" he asked, settling beside her. "Tomorrow you fight Victor. Tomorrow this all ends, one way or another. I'm not sure sleep is possible." Wendy turned to look at him. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," Cale admitted. Not of losing the fight, I know I'm stronger than Victor, but of losing everything I've built. Everyone I've sworn to protect. You. His hand found hers in the darkness. These past 2 weeks have been the most complicated, dangerous, impossible weeks of my life. And also the best, because of you. Kale. Let me finish. Tomorrow, I fight for Silvercrest. But I'm also fighting for the future. I want one where you and I have a chance to explore what this is between us. Where Mira grows up safe. Where my pack doesn't have to live in fear of Victor's ambitions. He turned to face her fully. I'm fighting for all of it, Wendy. And I will win. I know you will. Wendy leaned in and kissed him, soft and lingering. Because you're the strongest person I've ever met. Wolf or human or something in between, you're extraordinary. They sat together under the stars, holding each other against the coming dawn, and Wendy let herself believe that everything would work out. That tomorrow, Kale would defeat Victor. That they'd have their chance at the future they both wanted. That sometimes, impossibly, love was strong enough to survive even supernatural wars. Dawn of the challenge. The council assembled in a clearing near the destroyed Silvercrest estate, a neutral ground where both packs gathered under council supervision. Victor arrived with his 90 rogues, looking confident and cruel. Kale stood with his 43, looking like vengeance made flesh. The two alphas faced each other in the center of the clearing. Council enforcers forming a perimeter to prevent interference. Councillor Thane spoke the ritual words. Under ancient law, this challenge is recognized. Victor of Blackridge versus Kale of Silvercrest. Combat to submission or death. The victor claims both territories and absorbs the loser's pack. Let the challenge begin. Victor shifted first, a massive rust-colored wolf, with those same sickly yellow eyes. He was larger than Wendy expected, easily matching Kale's size. Kale shifted second, midnight black fur, silver gold eyes blazing with controlled fury. The two wolves circled, assessing, waiting for an opening. Then they collided with a force that shook the ground. The fight was brutal and primal, teeth and claws, blood and fur, two apex predators fighting for dominance. Victor fought with vicious cunning, going for joints and tendons, trying to cripple rather than kill. Kale fought with calculated precision, blocking attacks and countering with devastating efficiency. Minutes felt like hours. Blood stained the ground, both black fur and rust-colored, impossible to tell who was winning. Then Victor made a mistake. He lunged for Kale's throat, overextended, left his flank exposed for just a second. That second was all Kale needed. He twisted, caught Victor's exposed shoulder in his jaws, and used the rogue alpha's momentum to flip him onto his back. Before Victor could recover, Kale's teeth found his throat. One bite. One crushing squeeze of those powerful jaws. Victor went limp, dead. The clearing erupted in voices, cheers from Silvercrest, shocked silence from Blackridge rogues. Kale shifted back to human form, standing over Victor's body, blood staining his mouth, his silver gold eyes blazing with triumph and exhaustion. It's done, Councillor Thane announced. Victor is dead. Kale of Silvercrest is victorious. Under ancient law, all Blackridge territory now belongs to Silvercrest. All of Victor's pack members are offered sanctuary under Silvercrest protection, or free exile with no persecution. The former Blackridge rogues knelt one by one, acknowledging Kale as their new alpha. Some would leave, seeking other territories. But most, broken and lost without Victor's cruel leadership, chose to stay, to become part of something better. Wendy ran to Kale as pack members surrounded him, celebrating. He caught her mid-run, lifting her off her feet, and kissed her in front of everyone, claiming her publicly as his, in a way that left no room for doubt. It's over, he murmured against her lips. It's finally over. What happens now? Now? Kale set her down, his hands framing her face. Now we rebuild. The estate, the pack, our lives, together if you'll have me. I'll have you, Wendy said, echoing her promise from days ago. Wolf and all. Forever, if you'll let me. Forever sounds perfect. They stood in the clearing as the sun rose over the mountain, the new day washing away the darkness of Victor's reign. Around them, two packs became one, former enemies becoming family, and Wendy realized that this impossible, beautiful, terrifying new life was exactly where she belonged. 3 weeks later, Silvercrest Estate rose from its ashes. The pack rebuilt with startling speed. And this time, they built it bigger. Rooms for the former Blackridge members who'd chosen to stay. A proper medical facility where Dr. Wendy Taylor would treat both LYCAN and human patients. A sanctuary where orphan children like Mira could grow up safe and loved. Wendy's clinic in Moonridge thrived under Dr. Sarah Chen's management, and the two women formed a partnership that served the entire mountain community. The townspeople never questioned why Dr. Taylor spent most of her time at the mysterious Silvercrest estate. They simply accepted it as one of those quirks wealthy hermits were allowed. And on a clear autumn night, under a full moon, Cale Silvercrest claimed Wendy as his mate in a ceremony witnessed by the entire pack. She wasn't LYCAN, and never would be. But she was pack. She was family. She was home. No regrets? Cale asked later that night, as they stood on the balcony overlooking their territory, about accidentally calling a werewolf king and getting dragged into a supernatural war? Not even one. Wendy leaned against him, feeling his warmth, his strength, his absolute certainty that they belonged together. Best wrong number I ever dialed. Cale's laugh rumbled through his chest. Best mistake I ever answered. They stood together under the moonlight, alpha and mate, wolf and human, and wrote the first chapter of their forever. And so their story ends. Or perhaps it's just beginning. Here's a question for you. What would you sacrifice for a love that defies all logic? Your safety, your old life, or everything you thought you knew about the world? If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like this video and share your answer below.